Well, here, let me show you some notes that I was taking. So before jumping into the wave, one thing I did do was I looked back at my reference. This is always a good thing to double check. So if you look at the wave here, look at how much faster that is compared to our animation. It's much more frantic. It adds a little bit more energy to that, which I kind of want to explore because right now the shot is very laid back, kind of slow. It would be interesting to see how that wave could add an extra level of energy and contrast with the kind of relaxed state that the body is in. It'll be interesting to see. It might not work, but we can try. So what I did here was I just marked out some quick notes. So for example, oh, I noticed as I was scrubbing through, the fingers drag right here. So I really want to get that drag outwards. That's something my shot doesn't have right now. Trying to look at the arcs. Which way are the hands moving through the motions? I looked at all the extremes. So I found out where all my extremes are and timed that out. Not that I'm going to be using this timing exactly, but it gives me an idea of what's happening. I took notes on what's on little details. So for example, when the hand goes from screen left to screen right, the thumb actually leads that action right there, which is something I would not have expected. I would have thought that the thumb would have dragged. But no, the thumb leads the action. And then it drags back here. So the thumb is leading and then dragging, leading and then dragging, which is just a little interesting detail. Might be something fun to add into our shot. So I did all of this, and then I just kind of did some master notes here. So what I mean by master notes is just kind of put it all in one spot. So I timed it all out. So this is the timing from the reference. Below that is the updated timing that I want to try. I wanted to make it faster because right now this is a total of 30 frames, which feels way too slow for what my shot is. So I just took a frame off of each one. It's going to make some of the waves very fast, 2 frames. Might not work, but we'll give it a try. If not, we'll just cut out some of the waves. So we've got that. Little notes on the fingers. So when the hand goes screen left, so right here, the fingers straighten before they hit the extreme. As they go screen right, the fingers bend before they hit the extreme. So that was just a nice little note that I want because it's going to add a nice little overlap into that hand. And then from screen right to screen left, as it goes this way, the hand tilts backwards. It does that. When it goes the other way, it tilts forward. A big thing with waves is that they aren't flat. It's not just this with no other rotation. It's just one axis. That's not the case. It's a lot of axes. If you watch people wave, they're actually kind of doing this. This is exaggerated. But there's this kind of circular motion that goes into the wave. So I want to try and capture that. We can make it more subtle. We can make it bigger so the character's basically doing this. But those little details are going to help us make the wave much more detailed and dynamic versus just a basic, boring and make it feel robotic. So with all of these, we're pretty much ready to jump right in and get going. So I'm going to put this reference over to the side so I can see my notes. And we can jump right in. Now, I'm thinking the first pass I'm going to do is going to be on this hand, just because it should be pretty quick to at least unlock it from the body. I'll have to come back and refine it a little bit, but I do want to see if I can get a quick pass on it. And the way I'm thinking I'm going to do this, I could try to just animate it all manually, or I can use some existing curves to build in some animation. So for example, the up and down of the hand, this arm is just kind of holding itself there. It's pressing against the body, which means that it's not going to be just moving around randomly and bouncing, but it can overlap with how the body is moving. Oh, and Sylvia, thank you so much. Geez, 18 months already? Jeez, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Oh, I love this song. Really appreciate that. And what is the software? This is Maya. So this is the Autodesk Maya. It is the industry standard for most animation. Not the only software for CG animation, but it's what most studios use. If you're interested in learning 3D animation, Blender is a great alternative. It is a really good piece of software. Other good softwares are Houdini and C4D, Cinema 4D. Those are harder to get, especially if you're not a professional already, because there's not really a trial version you can just download and use to learn, which kind of is tricky. So if you're interested in learning animation, Autodesk Maya is really good. The only problem is that it can be hard to get a student license unless you're in a school already. So with this, let's try to add some overlap to this hand. I'm going to take my hips here. I'm going to take that translate Y of the hips right there. I'm just going to copy that. And I'm going to paste it on the translate Y of the hand. So let's take that and go to Edit, Paste, Options. Now there's a few things that I want to make sure of here. First of all, I want to make sure that the time I'm pasting from the clipboard, that's basically pasting the time as is from what I copied. And I want to connect the new copy. What that's going to do is it's going to take that initial frame right there, or I should say the initial key, and connect it to that. Actually, here, let me show you what happens if I don't. So you'll see my key is right here at about -25. If I hit apply right now, and we're just going to merge the animation, the animation is completely reset. It's moved way up. If I have connect on, like so, it connects it at that same time. This just makes it so that I don't have to rescale things and move things back around to get back the position I had. Is it a huge difference? No, as long as you have buffer curves. So I have buffer curves turned on right now. I can see where my keys used to be. Because of that, even if I just merged it here, and oh no, the hand's way out of position, well, I can just take that whole section and move it down and line it back up to those buffers right there. If I didn't have that, I would be trying to just guess where the hand is supposed to go. So with this, we start to get a little bit of extra motion in the hand. You can see how it's moving up and down. It's not locked anymore, which is great. Except it's just following the hips exactly, which is not super helpful. So one of the things I'm going to want to do is offset this. So I'm thinking maybe two frames here, which is basically going to make it so that as he starts to move, hopefully we'll be able to see this clearly, that hand overlaps the action here. So we get a little bit of a drag to that wrist. It's moving with the body, but it's not 100% glued to it. Just a little. This is going to help just add a little bit of extra life in there. Now this motion is probably a little bit big. I should probably tone it down. So I'm just going to take my scale tool, scale the whole thing down a little bit. The reason I'm scaling it down is so that I don't have the same ups and down, or the maximum up and down of the hips isn't exactly the same as a hand. That'll feel a little weird. So we do that. And for now, I'm gonna leave that for now. I want to try a few other things to see how much more we can get in here. So we've got that. Now, another thing I would like to do is add a little drag left and right. And I have a few choices on what I can use here. The obvious choice would be the hips, using the side to side of the hips, the translate X, to affect the translate X of the hand. I could also use the rotation of the chest. So for example, if I rotate my body here, I'm not translating, I'm just rotating. So I do this. I could add a little bit of drag from that rotation. Copy that curve onto the hand and then build that in there. So I'm just going to look at my two curves. Rotate Y here versus the translate X of the hips and just see which one's more interesting. Definitely the rotate Y feels just a little bit more fun. But at the same time, the biggest motion is the hips coming through here. So let's try the hip motion first. Translate X. I'm going to copy this to the, in this case, this curve right here, the translate X of the hand. So same thing as before. Take that, copy it. Now I didn't insert, so his hand is a little bit broken right there. Let's just bring that right back. And we get something like this. Now this is going to be way off. So at the end here, his arm is going out just a little too far, which is actually just fine. I can just scale this back down. And I just want it to be a little offset, not much. So using that buffer curve as a guide and just bring them through like so. There we go. So now we've got just that little bit of motion in there. Not much, but it's in there. If I want to offset it, create some overlap, we can do that as well. Maybe I'll do 3 frames. I want to see how that feels. Okay. There we go. So we get something a little bit more like that. So just that alone is going to give us some nice animation. Now there is something I have to be very careful of. And that is that the hand, we might end up getting some, let's just say we might get some weirdness in that hand. The reason for this is that right now it's set to follow the chest. So it's following the rotations of the chest in there. The problem with that is, as nice as that is, there's certain moments where the chest is kind of overlapping, and that's what's causing that like punching motion in the hand, which is not great. So I have a few options. I can choose to counter animate that. So I could just go through and track my arcs. So track the hand here, just use the arc tracker right there and make sure that, well, things are moving nicely. And overall, it actually doesn't look too bad. Like right here. Not terrible. So I might leave it for now. We'll see. If I feel like it's not working out, if I'm still getting that wiggling or popping motion in there, what I can do is basically transfer this animation onto another control that I'll be able to polish much more easily. We're going to see how that works first before doing that whole process, but it is an option that I have to simplify this motion and just kind of make my life easier for polishing. For now, let's kind of call that here. Now, one thing I do notice is the hand kind of feels like it's going a little high here. I might go into my Translate Y and just bump all of this down. Just a little. There we go. Okay. So, we've got that. And Animouth, hello! So, we've got that hand. At least now it's not pinned to the body. Great. At this point, we can start building in some extra little bit of motions. So add some rotations to the wrist, all of that. But I'm going to wait and hold off on that. The big reason being, now that I have the main motion of the wrist, the next thing that's going to really interact with this is the elbow. So for example, here, as the elbow kind of pushes down here onto that hand, I would like to get that hand to react a little bit. And we get a little bit of change of angle and maybe a little dip into the wrist. But I'm not going to be able to do that properly until I get this hand cleaned up. So we're going to move on to the next hand here just for a little bit. Okay. So for this hand, he's kind of just holding his chin like this. And we've got the first part here is going to be the move. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm breaking this shot up into different sections. We've got the move here into the hold. So that goes basically up to frame 30-ish, 29. Then there's the bring the hand away from the face and kind of just bring it out slightly relaxed. And then there's the whole wave through here. We've got these 3 sections. I'm going to just do one section at a time. That way I'm not focusing on too much. So what I don't want to do is start fixing the beginning here while also trying to block in the new wave, while also trying to get the overlap of the hand leaving the face. This is just going to be too much to focus on all at once. And honestly, I'm just not going to get the detail I want out of each individual moment. So I would much rather take my time, start here at the beginning, and just do this one section. Now, if you have Animbot, one useful tool with this, and I believe, yes, I think Maya has this as well, time slider bookmarks. So let's see, I've never used Maya's one before. Let's do that. So I'm going to undo that. Just select my range here. So from frame 1 to 29, this is the first section that I need to work on. Right there. Right click, time slider bookmarks. Let's create one. And we're going to call this just chin. This is just a hand on chin. Let's make it a little bit more here. Hand on chin. Let's do that in green, like the color. Create. And you can see how in the time slider, we now have that green bar. Okay, the next part is the hand pulling away into the hold. That goes from frame 30. I would say I could probably go right to 43. Right there. Right click. Great. Now this is a feature in Maya 2020. I believe specifically 2020.2. So if you have older versions, you're not going to have this. Animbot also has a feature similar to this. So this is going to be the pull away. And let's do this in blue. There we go. From there, we have the wave. Right up until the end. Now, I don't really have to mark that because, well, it's the whole ending. But if I wanted to, what I could do is make sure that I have a hold at the end. So I want that hand to stop moving, so not just wave all the way to the very stop. So I would like the wave to end at around frame 68. So let's mark that. So right click, time slider bookmarks. Great. Wave. And this is going to be purple. I'm just picking random colors. So with that, we have our times delineated. And this is very helpful, especially when you're animating. It's nice to just kind of focus on smaller sections. Now this shot isn't that long, it's only 70 frames. But if you're working on a 300 frame shot, you don't want to focus on those full 300 frames for everything. It's too much. Once you get to the refining or even the splining phase, you want to start just focusing on smaller sections. This way you can really get in depth on the details in that section and make sure everything's working without just bouncing around randomly. So by doing this, just kind of sectioning off your shot makes it easier. Now you don't have to use bookmarks. Honestly, you can just kind of reduce the range like this. So I could just reduce my range. There we go. I've got just that one segment that I'm looking at, and I'm not going to see anything else. But bookmarks are helpful just so you remember which ranges you were working on and you're not having to kind of guess each time. So just something to keep an eye out on. I really like this just because it helps to color code things. My timeline just a little bigger there. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to need to do is just make sure that the hand stays on the chin. So to do this, we've got our first pose. Let's refine this, make sure it's working. I think it actually is. It hasn't really changed that much since the start of the shot. Okay, good. Let's go to the end of the sequence here. So, does this pose work? No. You can see how that hand is just cutting right in. So I need to repose this right there. Now I've got a few choices. I could keep that hand so that it locks on and keeps the index finger and the thumb against the chin, or I can make it so that as he rotates his hand, his thumb is the only thing on the chin by the end point here, which I kind of like, just because it adds extra rotation to the hand from there to there. If I kept the fingers on completely, we would get this, which is not bad, but it kind of keeps the hand just doing one axis versus a little bit of a rotation to it. And this is just a little bit more interesting pose-wise because it's slightly 3/4. This song always makes me think of Pilot Wings. So what I'm doing now is I want to keep that thumb right on the center of the chin. So right around there. Okay. So we've got our two poses here, where we want to start, where we want to end up. And now all I need to do is kind of refine those. So let's see. I'm actually comparing. Which one do I like more? Thumb on there or holding? Let's actually do a quick comparison just to make sure. It's always good to double check these things before you make any big, huge changes. What software am I using? This is Autodesk Maya, which is pretty much the industry standard for animation and well, CG animation, and typically motion capture as well, although that's also Motion Builder. Now, with that said, that's just what most studios tend to use. You can use whatever animation software you want, for example, Blender or Houdini, Cinema 4D, 3ds Max. As long as you have the tools that you need, that's the important thing. To find max efficient hardware. Yeah, so if you're looking to work for your own kind of animation game design, if you're just starting out, Blender is a great choice. It's free. There's no licenses, there's nothing. You can use it for paid work, all sorts of things. It's fantastic. The only real negative to Blender is that it's not really used in the professional industry that much. It's getting more, but it's still not, it hasn't caught on yet. So with that, it's going to be useful. If you're working on your own projects, it'll be more than enough. If you're trying to work with other studios, a little trickier sometimes. It's if you're looking for kind of an industry software, Maya is great. The only problem is it can be hard to get a student version to learn with. Otherwise, you have to pay for the indie license if you're just starting out, which is not that bad. It's like, what was it? I forget the price. But it's actually not so bad. It's not a terrible price for this, especially for what you get with Maya. You also get a lot of rigs and stuff with Maya compared to Blender. So yeah, those are going to be the big two choices if you're looking for CG kind of 3D software like that. If you're looking for 2D software, there's a lot of good options. Krita is free and really nice and lets you do 2D animation. If you're looking for editing software, DaVinci Resolve is free and it's basically on par with Adobe Premiere. So yeah, lots of options. Let's see. Horses don't shift between legs in a run, right? I forget. I'd have to look at reference, and I'm not sure what you mean by shift. Usually when horses run, they gallop, and it's front legs, back legs, I believe. If I remember correctly. I could be thinking of cats. If you can't tell from the reference that you have, what I would do is just look up other reference. That's not a bad thing. Find some other reference, even if it's slow motion reference, so that you can really see what the feet are doing. And then you can apply that into the reference that you currently have. So I'm thinking, now that I've posed it out, I kind of like this hand pose a little bit more. This one's nice, but it feels less kind of personal. It feels like he's angry, almost like he's about to bite his thumb. Whereas this feels a little bit more thinking. So I think I'm gonna try to get into this one. We'll see. The only problem with it is I feel like there's not that much of a contrast between these two poses versus this and this, which I really love that contrast when I'm playing the shot right now. It just kind of adds an extra little motion to that wrist. I wonder if I can get like a halfway between. Maybe if I just bring this through just a little bit more that way. Let's go with that. Okay. So, we've got that there. Now, there are a few different ways we could set this up. I could create a constraint that would basically allow me to keep that hand right on the chin and basically have no issues. The problem with that is that it could make certain things a little trickier. How do I want to do this? So the alternative is that I basically animate it all from scratch. Not a terrible thing, but also something that's going to be time consuming. Do you have any tips on when to use IK versus FK spines? I always seem to use both and end up counter animating. So the first tip I would have is always just use one or the other until you're very comfortable with both of them. On certain rigs, like this one, you can only have one or the other active. You can't have both. Some rigs, they're both active at the same time. In those cases, try to just use one. Now, as for when you should use them, for me personally, if I'm doing anything that's semi-realistic to realistic, so not super cartoony, I will prefer to use FK Spine. It just gets you more natural motions, more natural curves to the body. It overall just works more like the human spine does. Our spine is in FK in real life, so you get that realistic motion. If you're doing something really cartoony, huge squash and stretch, extremely distorted poses, let's say Hotel Transylvania style, or Tom and Jerry, kind of Wile E. Coyote style animation, IK Spine can be more useful for those situations because you can just bend the characters and get whatever you need in there. The other area that I'll tend to use IK Spine is if a character has to walk on all fours, or if I'm animating a quadruped like a cat or a dog. IK Spines make that way easier than trying to deal with FK Spine. The other thing that I try to work with, or the other thing that I try to keep in mind, is that you can't, or you don't have to just use one throughout the entire shot. You can switch. So for example, if I have a character, let's say I'm doing a realistic shot, they're walking around and then they have to get down on all fours to crawl under a table or something. I'll switch the spine. Start in FK. When they get on the ground to start crawling, switch to IK. Just like FK, IK arms, switching is not a bad thing. As long as you hide the transition, no one will ever notice, and it'll make your life as an animator much easier. So yeah, it's basically, that's pretty much it. It's whatever works best for the situation that you're currently in. And with that, there's also preferences. Some people just prefer IK Spine. It's what they like. It's what gets them really good animation. If that's the case, use IK Spine. If you prefer FK and you just cannot get IK to work for you, that's fine too. But for me, it's really animation dependent. What the style I'm looking for is. Okay. So, one thing I'm thinking of here is I do feel that I need a locator and a constraint on this hand for two reasons. One, it's just going to make my life a lot easier because I've got basically 30 frames that I have to animate this hand following the chin. And I could do it manually, but I don't feel like it. The other thing is, I feel like this is going to be a good demo to do for everyone because it's something that we all kind of run into at a certain point where we have to have a character hold on to something, whether it's the hand or the face or something outside of the body, and we have to pivot from a different point. We're not pivoting from the wrist anymore, we're pivoting from the fingers. So if I do this, I put my hand on, or my finger on my chin, I'm pivoting from my fingertip, not from my wrist. If you're trying to use this with your wrist control, that basically means having to rotate the wrist, move the hand back into position. Oh, it's got to change, rotate the wrist. So you rotate the wrist, put the finger back into position. It's a nightmare. Sometimes it's not so bad. Other times it's just a real pain. So by using a locator here, what I can do is build in that motion a little bit more quickly. So I've got a few options on how I do this. Let me show you. I'm just trying to think what the coolest way to do this would be. I can do it simply, where I just place this locator at the chin and then constrain it to the chin, or lock it to the chin, constrain the hand to the locator, and then I'm done. I can also do it in a way that I can get the animation that I currently have on the hand onto the locator, so I don't have to redo a whole bunch of animation. But looking at my shot right now, I don't know if I really want to keep that animation anyway. it's just not that good. So let's just keep it simple. I'm going to take this locator and I'm going to place it at the chin. So to do this, I'm just going to find a chin control that I want to use. In this case, he's got this one right here. That's going to be perfect. I could use the jaw control as well, but I think both of these, yeah, they move together, so it really doesn't matter. The main thing with this is that the pivot point is right there, which is very nice. So the first thing I need to do is I need to put this locator into position. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to constrain it to that control right there. Take the control, then the locator. Under constraint, I'm going to go to parent, options, and I'm just making sure that the maintain option, maintain offset, is turned off. This snaps the locator into position, which basically lines it up with the face. Okay. With that, I'm just going to delete that constraint. So you open up the locator, just delete, like that. So with this, we've got our first locator. Now I'm going to do a slightly different constraint setup than I normally do on stream here, just to do something a little different and to have more flexibility for myself. So normally what I would do here is I would now parent the locator to the chin and then constrain the hand to the locator. This way I can still animate the locator and the hand follows along. Yay. I want a little bit more control. So I'm just going to do a full constraint setup here, but use multiple locators to do it. So let me go through here. So we've got our first locator. This is going to be, we'll call this chin underscore locator. It's just the locator that goes on the chin. Perfect. With that, let's duplicate it. And I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to have this one. I might use a second locator, we'll see. Yeah, let's use 3 for now. And we're going to have one that's going to be where the fingers pivot from. So this is going to be finger pivot locator. And then the other one is going to be an offset locator. So basically something that we can use to adjust positioning. So we'll take this one here. Let's name this one pivot offset. Locator. Okay. So let's go through here. The setup is basically going to be each one of these are going to be parented to the other, not constrained. So for anyone who's confused on that, constraining has a parent constraint. A parent constraint is not the same as parenting. Parenting is here under edit. Edit parent. And it's just a different way of connecting objects together. It's confusing, but they're just two different things. So to start with, I'm going to parent these objects under each other. I can do this in the outliner simply by middle mouse dragging and dropping one item onto the other. So like this. So we have the chin locator over top of the finger pivot, over top of the pivot offset. So something like that. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use my finger pivot and place that right where I want the fingers to pivot from, which is basically the end of the chin right here. Right there. Now, the pivot offset is basically going to be used to adjust what point the fingers are pivoting on, whether it's going to be, for example, if I have 2 fingers here, whether I'm pivoting from the index finger, or once it gets here, I can pivot from the thumb. And I could make this a little bit more in depth if I wanted to. Let me look at that last pose here. Okay. I don't think I'll need to. If we need to, I can re-rig this in just a second. So this is going to be where the thumb is going to be pivoting from. So right around... Well, actually, let's just kind of put this right where that thumb is going to be, because that's going to be the main pivot point in this case, right at that thumb. Right there. Okay. And then the offset, it really doesn't matter where this goes, as long as I kind of just keep it close enough, like that. So we've got our 3 locators. Yay. At this point, the locators are following the chin. Nope, they're not. So we need to get that working. To do this, we just constrain the locator, the chin locator, onto the actual chin. So take the chin control, take the locator, let's constrain it. And I'm making sure maintain offset is turned on. It won't make a difference in this case, but it just keeps that in line. And what went here? Did I constrain on the wrong thing? So chin, locator, apply. Okay, there we go. Had the wrong thing constrained. So now that follows the chin. Perfect. Now we need the hand to follow the locators. So to do this, I'm just going to take my wrist control and constrain it to the locator here, to the last one in the chain right there. So select that locator, then the wrist, constrain that. And what this is going to do is keep that hand locked in place right there. So now the whole shot, he's just got his hand right on his chin. We're going to have to turn that off at some point. But for now, we're just focusing on from frame 1 to 29. What I can do now is just take this one pivot point here, the finger pivot. Let's key that at the beginning and at the end here. And I can just use this, to rotate that hand and get that back into position here. So if ever I'm not sure, like, is that the right position? I can just turn off my constraint here. Oop. Okay, that's the pose I want. Turn that constraint back in, or turn that constraint back on, I should say. Get that hand pose to match what I had before. So something a little bit more like that. We'll see. Okay, a little bit more rotated so we can see the back of the hand. We'll say something like that. Perfect. Now, throughout this whole section here, we've got that pretty much in place. And it's just there, done. With this, we can just refine the animation on that finger locator right there. So I can just play around with my rotations here. So for example, at the beginning, the hand shouldn't really start rotating all that much. Probably not until like frame 13. So I'm just going to hold that pose, copy that over. Now that hand stays kind of locked to the chin. I can refine this a little bit, add some drag to it. So as the hand kind of comes up here, we just get a little bit of drag on that wrist. Then it comes up. Let's kind of overshoot it just a little bit here. And then as it comes through, let's drag it a little bit more. So you can see how suddenly this animation is becoming much easier. Instead of having to try to manually build all of this in and again rotate the wrist, reposition the hand. All I'm doing is doing this quick little thing. For anyone who is curious about how to do this, all of these streams are recorded. So if you go to the avatar in the bottom left and click on that and go to videos, once this stream is over, the replay will happen or will be uploaded, and then you can just rewatch that if you want to. That way you don't have to worry about clipping it and kind of trying to take all the notes all at once. But basically, to answer the question, why use 3? By using 3, I get more offsets. So right now I'm just kind of using 1, which technically that's all I would have needed in this case. It's a pretty simple animation. But by using 3, I have the ability to adjust things. So for example, let's look at here on the last pose. His thumb is not in the center of his chin anymore. It's off to the side. If I wanted to adjust that hand so that as he kind of swings his thumb across, it actually slides over, we can actually do that by using this. If I wanted him to go from here, so I'm pivoting from there, his knuckle contacts, and then he rotates from here, instead of having to make a whole new constraint setup for every single time he switches like this, I can use my offset locator, bring the knuckle into place on top of that locator there, and now the hand pivots from this new point. So I've created a setup that basically allows me to change pivot points at any time, which is really nice. If you have to do an animation where your character is doing this and then walking across his face, you can have like all of that super easily. And the reason there's the first locator is just so that I can constrain it instead of parenting. The reason I want to do that is because I'm parenting, or I'm attaching this to the rig. If I was to parent it to the chin, let's actually create a new locator just to show this. If I take this and I parent it, just a regular parent, to the chin here. So we'll take the locator, then the chin, and hit P. You can see that that locator disappears in our outliner. Now it is in here. Because parenting puts the object into the hierarchy, to find that locator again in the outliner, I have to dig through all of this just to find that locator. That's okay for quick, simple constraints, but in this case, I want to be able to find it right here. I want to be able to just look at this and go, oh, wait, here's all my chin locator setup. There it is. That way, if I have to change anything, if I have to access anything, I'm not digging through the rig all the time. So it's just a slightly more complex setup, but it gives you more options. Does it mean you always have to do this? No. Honestly, I don't use this setup that often because it's not really needed a lot of times. But in this case, I would rather be safe than sorry. Okay. So that hand, it's starting to drag a little too much right here. Let's bring that back. Probably dragging a little too much there as well. And then let's add a little bit more drag here. So we can get a little overlap. We'll see how it looks. So it comes through. Okay, this one needs to drag a lot more. I'm just watching the spacing of the wrist. This needs to drag a lot less. But you can see how this is making our life just a little bit easier, because we can really just focus on the one control versus translating and everything else. I wonder if I'm just dragging this too much. Yeah, this kind of feels like it's going a little overboard with the dragging. So maybe something like that. And then let's just settle it into place a little faster. So it kind of holds into there. There we go. So you can see how, because we set up that locator, we've got this complex animation, or what would be a complex animation of trying to keep that finger on the chin, and really didn't take us all that long, honestly. It's just some quick overlapping here. I can clean up my curves, get some nice weight in there, and that's pretty much it. Let's ease that in here, just for the sake of cleanliness. There we go. And if I need to refine anything, it's easy to do. And that's really my favorite part about this is, oh shoot, I feel like the elbow or the wrist is kind of coming out too much right here. Well, oop, done. Instead of having to re-block that whole section and try to redo it all, is just that simple little tweak and then move on. So it takes a little bit more time to set up, but once you have it set up, you're good. Almost feel like this is taking a little too long here. Let's retime that. Just I want that nice and sharp. And then I can add just a little overshoot too. Got a tiny little overshoot here. There as well. Just keep that momentum going. There we go. And the other nice thing with this is, let's say we've done all of this and okay, it looks good, but dang it, it's not on the center of the chin. Oh no, it's like off to the edge here, but I kind of want it in the center of the chin. Okay, great. Readjust everything, which would be a nightmare. Or I can just take my curve here and go, whoop. There we go. Center of the chin. Oh, it's cutting in a little bit. Let's just take that whole curve, get that right where I want it to be. There we go. All the animation is intact. Done. I've readjusted where it's pivoting from, and I'm done. Yay! So this is a big thing in animation where, as you're learning animation, one of the trickiest parts is going to be, how to put this, knowing when to save yourself a lot of time, knowing how to do it too. It takes experience. It takes a lot of doing it the wrong way before you get it the right way. But these types of little tips and tricks can make a huge difference. And it's one of the big reasons why I really recommend people get to learn constraints in Maya, or any software really. They are very tricky to get used to. They're very tricky to learn, but once you do, they can take a whole section of animation like this, and instead of taking forever to animate this and try to figure it out, I finished this in what? Like, if I was to do this myself, it would have been what, 5 minutes? That's it. For 30 frames of animation, I've got it perfectly on the chin. I could add a little offset to it on the chin as well, so it slides on the chin. That would be not a problem. Compared to if I was doing this manually, going frame by frame, trying to keep it in place and not slide, which would probably take a good hour or so to get done. Once you learn constraints, it really opens up your world. Now, there are tools that will let you do constraints. So for example, Animbot has a really cool pivot tool. There's a few plugins that you can use that basically you just click a button and it'll create a constraint for you. When you're first learning especially, I don't recommend using any of those. Animbot is really good, so once you get experience, I would recommend using that. But try not to use constraint plugins, because sometimes you're not going to have access to that plugin. When you're working at a studio, you're working on a freelance project, sometimes the studio you're working for will not let you use outside plugins. They've got their own plugins, they've got their own pipeline. They don't allow outside things, which means that if you're not comfortable using constraints on their own at default, and you only know how to use Animbot's plugin or some other plugins, you're going to be working at a studio and suddenly, what do? How do you get this to attach? And how do you make this work? Oops, got to do it by hand. That's not a good situation to be in. So learning the basics first makes it so that you're more versatile later on. You at least have that as a backup. Not that the other tools aren't useful, but we can build off of it. We even have tools for constraints at work, but I still use the Maya ones. Yeah, that's the other thing. If you're used to the Maya ones, even if you're given tools, you can still use the Maya ones. But if you're not used to the Maya ones and you suddenly get your tools taken away, now you're in trouble. So now we've got this section here. Now this section is kind of the let go. His hand shouldn't follow his chin anymore. So to do this, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my wrist constraint here. Let's set a key, or I shouldn't say wrist constraint, just the wrist. Set a key on frame 29. And I'm going to try to figure out where I want to turn the constraint off. So let's actually look at the animation I've got here. And it's probably going to turn off as the chin starts moving here. Okay. So you can see the wrist was doing all sorts of weirdness. Let's go to frame 33, set a key on frame 34. Yeah, we're going to switch it from 33 to 34. Now, if I do this right now, I'll set a key on 34 and turn this off. This could work. So now you'll see that the hand lets go and we get this, which is a big pop. That could work, but I don't want this big pop. I want to make this a little bit more of a clean transition. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to first animate the constraint a little bit more before turning it off. Just get it where I want it to be. So for example, here, I'm going to drag that hand. Oops, not the wrist itself. Let's go back to our chin locator right here. Set a key. Yeah, 35 is good. And the hand's going to start pulling away from the face. So something like this. Now, if ever I want to double check the pose, I can just turn off that constraint. Okay. I don't have to match it exactly, but I just want it close so that I can get things to line up a little bit better. Okay. So off. Okay, we're getting pretty close there. I could even drag this control down slightly. just so we get that drag on the chin as he starts to turn. So now we get this. I think I can hold this pose a little longer here before it starts to drag down. A little bit more like that. I'm going to try to refine this motion just a little bit. The closer I can get it to pretty much done, the easier it'll be to turn the constraint on and off. Okay, so we've got that animation coming through here. Perfect. It's sliding down, good. Okay, now let's do the constraint here, the switch. So I'm just going to take the wrist and make sure to set a key here on frame 35. So as the hand pulls out, we key that. And then from 33 to 34, this is where the constraint turns off. Right through here. And let me actually set a key on 34 as well, just to make sure I've got everything pretty much done. Okay, so boop, boop, set a key, set a key. From 33, the constraint is on. 34, constraint is off. And now, by animating the constraint first, getting that motion in place, then setting a key on this whole section from 33, 34, 35, you can see that the constraint turns off and there's not a single pop. It's perfectly clean. This is because as you key a constrained object, it's keying it in position. So let's say the object is constrained and I set a key here. It's putting a key on the actual control, even though it's constrained. So by animating the constraint first, setting a key on everything, when I turn that constraint off, it's still going to use that same information that I had keyed in earlier. Creates a smooth transition. From there, all I need to do is clean up the rest of the transition out here. So we've got that. And now the wrist is going to flip and break. This is because we've got an Euler flip in there. So for anyone who doesn't know, a lot of people call this a gimbal flip. It's not a gimbal flip. This is an Euler flip. Basically, the hand is trying to spin 360 degrees back into place, which is very painful. Luckily, there is a simple fix for that tip most of the time. Take your rotation curves, go to curves, and you want to just use the Euler filter. It's spelled Euler, but it's pronounced Euler. It's it was named after a mathematician. And there we go. See how it readjusted the curves? Basically, it's taking out that flip, that 360 degree flip. And now we have that. So we're going from constrained to unconstrained, and no one will know. At this point, I just need to add a little bit more of an arc to the hand here. I feel like it needs a little bit more drag this way. I'm just tweaking the transition here, trying to make it a little bit better. Let's ease that just a little bit more. Okay. There we go. Now we've got that constraint letting go. The hand arcs through. No one will be the wiser. Done. So now we've pretty much got that whole first section polished. And Kendriel, thanks so much for the sub. Oh man, thanks so much. I really appreciate that. I don't know why I love this song so much. It's so good. It's so silly. But thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So with this, and Frank the Tank, thank you so much as well. Oh man, thank you guys. So hopefully this was helpful. Like just this section here. It's one of those things that a lot of people don't realize that they have the option for when they're animating, is to use the constraints as a way of simplifying certain animations. It's not just there to lock something in place. It can be there to make our lives much easier. Does anyone else do the dance when the song plays now? I hope so. We must all do the Mario. I need to animate a character doing the Mario at some point. I'm actually hoping to do that pretty soon, just because I want it so bad. Okay. So, we've got that. The next thing we're going to have to do is just get the hand to properly open up here. Next animation after this. Maybe not the next one, because there's another demo I want to do on posing with rigs, but maybe the one after that. That I would probably I would be up to do. That's what I'm trying to say. Round that out just a little bit more there. But yes, it has to happen at some point. Okay, so the next thing I need here is this kind of wrist motion in here. It's not bad, but it's kind of flat, for lack of a better term. And that's for a few reasons. The first is the finger animation in here is just boring. It's not really doing much. So to fix this, the first thing I'm going to do is first focus on the wrist rotations. I'm not going to start doing any finger stuff before I get all of the wrist at least close to where I want it to be. The big reason for that is any little changes to the wrist is going to make a huge change in those fingers. If I'm not focusing on the wrist first, I might end up just redoing a lot of stuff. Okay, as the wrist comes through here, I might offset these keys just to create a little overlap. And let's get this wrist a little less broken. So this is a very important thing when you're posing out of the hands. Watch the wrist position, like right here. That's broken. Not that it's going to make a huge difference, and it is okay to break joints if it's going to exaggerate our animation. But in general, unless I'm doing a really cartoony shot, I try to avoid it as much as possible. Because it tends to make a character feel... It makes them do unnatural motions. Which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it can be distracting. We'll put it that way. Okay, now I'm just going to clean up my curve here. Let's see. Can't thank you enough, man. Hopefully I don't sound like a broken record from yesterday. Pendulum video with your brother saving video. Oh, awesome. I'm so glad it's helping. The pendulum, I agree. It is no joke. I think it was either the pendulum or the tail assignment was the hardest one in class 1 when I was in it. It was just, oh, so tricky. I see why it's the hardest assignment. Yeah. And I'm glad that it's helping, that the video. Breaking your wrist isn't natural? Well, I guess you could say it's natural. It is perfectly possible to break our wrists, so in a way it is a natural thing. But the problem is resetting it back into place. So yeah, it's not a bad thing to do, and you shouldn't be afraid to break joints, to over exaggerate things. The main thing for me is it's not my go-to. It's not the like, oh, I have to pose this out, I'm just gonna break it. I would rather try to find a solution that involves a more natural motion first, and then if I can't do that, then I'll start breaking the wrists or whatever part of the body. And again, that also depends on what I'm animating. If I'm doing a really cartoony shot, then by all means just go all out and break it. Just go crazy. But for something like this, I want the motions to feel as natural as possible. Okay, I want a little bit more drag on that wrist right here. I think I need a little bit more forward drag. Rotate Z. A little bit more. I love this song. Okay, so we're starting to get into the next section here. So this is why it's nice to have bookmarks. You see how we're going into the purple section right there? I don't want to start doing that. I need to make sure I've got this section here cleaned up first. If I start going into the next one and start just cleaning all that up, all I'm doing is wasting time because I've got to reblock that section. Now, what is a black curve on the graph editor? That is the buffer curve. So the buffer curve is a really cool feature in Maya that is basically a super undo. So for example, let's say we look at this curve here, and I'm just noticing that I've got a weird wiggle right in there. Clean that out. Or actually, no, that's where my constraint is. Yeah, let's actually clean that out there. Okay, sorry, I got distracted by a little wiggle. So the buffer curve is a super undo. Basically what the buffer curve allows you to do is to save a copy of your curve in memory and then be able to swap it at any time. So let's say this curve right here, I've done a lot of changes. You can actually see the old curve right there. At any time, I can hit this button and swap between the curves, and it goes back to the animation I used to have. This means that I can take any animation that I want, go all out with it, just destroy it, and if I don't like it, hit a button and I go right back to where I was before. If you want to save the curve into the buffer, so let's say, you know, I really like this curve, I want to just try something, and I know I'm not going to go back to the old one. Hit this arrow right here, saves it to the buffer curve. Now I can make some changes, and you can see the old curve right in there. It makes it very easy to compare without just having to do a whole bunch of undos and things like that. So buffer curve is huge. I use it all the time. It is such a lifesaver when you're trying to animate these kind of complex motions. So yeah, if you're animating Maya, buffer curves they're so much fun. Yeah, I feel like there's something a little off right here. The arc of the wrist is too linear. I need to exaggerate that a little bit more. So I'm watching the wrist, and it kind of just stops right there, and then starts to come back here. Needs to keep going just a little bit more. Then here, feel like it could be pulled through. So we kind of keep that arc going a little bit more before pulling back. Just a little. There we go. The other reason I like to do this is it adds some contrasting motion. So you can see how his body is starting to go screen left here, right there. By keeping the hand going screen right just a little bit, I build in a contrast in that motion so that it feels like the character is, or it just makes the motions more dynamic. You're not just getting everything moving to the left, everything moving to the right. You get this kind of offset in the motion, which just makes things a little bit more interesting. See. Hey Peter, I'm doing well. Enjoying the weekend. I've got what's it called? To the Moon. Is it To the Moon? The new Netflix movie that just came out. I'm so excited to watch that. I'm having a movie night tonight, so yay. Let's see, which 3D software would you recommend to start into modeling and animation? I know some, but I would like to practice more. The Over the Moon, that's it. I would say it's going to be one of two. If you want a totally free option with nothing, like no payments, nothing at all, it's going to be Blender. Definitely, for sure, Blender. It is an amazing piece of software. It's just really, really good. The only problem is that it's a little limited in terms of animation compared to Maya here that I'm using. Not so much in the program itself, but in the rigs. So Maya has a lot of free rigs you can get, a lot of good paid rigs as well. Blender, not so much. There's not as much of a rigging community that kind of puts out these really nice animation rigs. It's getting better, but it's not quite there yet. With that said, it's free. With Maya, you can get a student license. It's a little hard to get nowadays, which sucks. But it is also the industry standard program. Not that everyone uses it, but most companies use it or have some experience with Maya, which means that if you use it, you're learning how to use a program that most studios will kind of work with at some point. So it really depends on your situation. If you're doing freelance work, typically Maya is best, and there is an indie version of Maya that's a lot less expensive, and then you can use it for work and actually get paid doing that. If you're doing freelance work, that's also really good. So it's really up to you and what your kind of financial situation is and what your end goal is. If it's just to learn, just to kind of practice and explore this like animation 3D modeling world, Blender for sure. It's just going to be really good. I personally don't really know how to use Blender. I've tried a few times, but it's still a fantastic piece of software. I feel like there's something happening in my rotation of the wrist here. Rotate X. That's just a little wonky. The joy of little tweaks. That's better. So I'm starting to get into a little bit of like polishy stuff, but that's not a bad thing to get into at this point. Now the next thing I need to do is I need to just do a quick pass on the fingers. The big thing that I need to do is that as the fingers pull away, they're just opening really far right away, which is not good. As the hand pulls away, it's just going to relax a little bit. It's going to stay in this pose, but just less tense. Right now, it's just kind of snapping, opening, and then holding there. That should only really happen at this point. And actually here, I need to drag that wrist back. Get a little bit more drag in there. So what was happening was I was starting to point the wrist right towards camera, which I'm not a fan of. The fingers were doing this. So I just want to tweak that back here just a little bit. See how that feels. That way we can feel the pull of the hand, and then as it comes through, I'll just refine this curve a little bit more. But we'll get that when we get there. Okay, so looking at our reference, so if you remember from the beginning, for anyone who had seen it, I've got a lot of notes here for the wave and all of that. But one thing specifically that I was noticing was that the drag happens right in here. So you can see how the hand's relaxed, and then as it pulls away right there, that's when the fingers open up. So that's what I'm trying to get here, is that same feeling, the drag. So that should really only happen right here. So I'm a little late right now on those fingers. So let's just retime this a little bit. The drag pose is kind of there. Yeah, let's say it's there. So I need that to happen right here. I'm just going to retime. Whoop. Something like that. So already that feels much better. You can feel how those fingers, as the hand is pulling back, the fingers are reacting. That's kind of what I want in there. Now the next thing I need to do is relax the fingers here a little bit more. So as they open up, kind of let it go a little bit more slowly. And how far do I want to push this? Maybe around there. And then I'm just going to hold this pose. So this is a technique that I like to use when I'm just trying to get some base hand animation. You'll notice that what I'm doing is to explain the process, I'm taking poses from in-betweens that Maya's already giving me. So for example, here, you can see how the fingers are starting to open up. I can take that pose there, middle mouse drag, and set a key, and I'm copying that pose onto another key. And what this allows me to do is basically create in-betweens based on what animation Maya is creating for me. It's a very quick way of blocking something out that I can then refine later, instead of having to move all the controls myself just to get a little bit of an in-between. So for example here, I now have, I'm just noticing there's a pop in the wrist right here. Translate X, I believe. Yeah, that knuckle. If I look at the knuckle right there, it was popping. That's better. Okay. So now the fingers, instead of just kind of snapping open, they ease open here. I could probably ease them a little bit more open right there. So let's grab all those fingers. Okay. So this pose is not quite open enough. Let's maybe take that pose. That's probably going to be too much. Actually, not so bad. So something like that. Now the hand opens up. No, too much now. Opens up, relaxes, gets dragged. There we go. What was your first animation project about? Paid work? It wasn't the most the first one, it wasn't the most glamorous. It was basically just doing some random animations just for some promotional material. That was it. There's no big studio, nothing. It was just kind of commercial work. Yeah. Nothing too glamorous, unfortunately. I wish I had the story of like, oh, my first work, yeah, I got hired by Disney right out the door. Yeah, I know some people who did, which is just like, whoa, that's awesome. But it was paid, so that's what mattered. It was also while I was still in school, so I wasn't looking for studio work at the time. It was just something that someone asked me to do, and I was like, okay, sure, I can do that. So, still building that experience, but it was still fun. I really enjoyed that. A job while still in school, it doesn't get better than that. Exactly. Which, it's fun, but also when you have homework to do, it's like, ugh. See, I got hired by Big Studio straight out of school is too cliche. It is kind of the, what's the right word? The fairy tale we all wish would happen, but very rarely does. A lot of times when you graduate, and this is something I see a lot with students, there's this assumption that as you graduate or when you graduate, you have to get hired by a big studio right out the door. You have to like make it big, and if you don't do that within the first few months, well, you failed as an animator. That is so not true. It takes time. A lot of times it's like at least 6 months after you graduate, if not more, before you're going to be looked at by a studio. And that's not a bad thing. It's just, it takes time. And what you want to do is use that time to keep learning, keep improving yourself. That's what's going to make you a really good animator in the end. And we've had lots of talks on this in the stream before about what you can do to avoid that burnout that tends to happen when you graduate and then you're waiting for the job offers, but they're not coming. And what do you do? How do you keep going? How do you improve? What do you do? It's really just a matter of continuing to learn and enjoying the learning process. It's tough, especially when you have bills to pay and all of that. I'm not saying that it's like, oh yeah, easy, done, haha. Like, I'm just gonna keep learning. Yay, I don't need to eat. No, you need to eat. You need to stay healthy. But at least keeping that love of learning is going to be very helpful in giving you that ability to keep improving. Yes, actually, I should take a sip of water. And then, like Sin was saying, not everyone will get into big studio ever, and that's not a bad thing either. A lot of people, when they're starting their animation careers, it's like, if I don't make it into Pixar or Disney or like these big studios, I've failed as an animator. No, that's not the case at all. Sometimes you'll work for many, many years just in small studios doing small little jobs, but those are not less important than a big studio job. And I see this all the time with like cartoons and stuff, where some of the best cartoons I've ever watched are some of the ones done by just these tiny little studios that you've never heard the name of, but they do this amazing work. And to discount them is just limiting yourself in terms of what you're going to be able to do in the future and kind of what options you have. See. Yeah, and then visas. That's a whole other thing. See. Getting encouragement from a studio to apply there. Nice. I know a lot of friends there and people who I've met through searching, and they all want me to apply. That's awesome. That is always a good feeling. And that's the importance of networking and keeping those networks alive. So definitely keep those contacts. So with that, let me actually figure out what I'm supposed to be doing here. So I've got the fingers kind of dragging in place here a little bit better. I need to start offsetting the fingers though. Now I could do that here already if I wanted to. Or I could wait until later. Honestly, there's not a real bad option here. I might wait until after I do the wave. This way I can kind of offset all the fingers together. We'll see. Let's actually just do a quick trial offset. So when you're opening and closing your hands, one thing to keep in mind is that we open and close our hands in very specific ways. When we close our hand, it's almost always pinky first. So you can try this yourself. Try closing your hand, index finger first, like that. It's gonna feel a little weird. Instead, we close our hands pinky first. It's not that we can't do this, but it's just weirder unless we're doing this. When we open our hands, it goes either way. So I can open pinky first, or I can open index finger first. And the difference, and you can actually see it when I'm just doing this like without paying attention, it's the way our wrists rotate. If I rotate my wrist this way towards me, my index finger will open first. If I rotate my hand the other way, my pinky finger opens first. Just try doing it the other way, where you rotate your hand away, but open your index finger first. It's weird. It's almost like doing the like tap your head, rub your stomach kind of thing. It's like you twist this way and it's like, get it back. Doing the other way, it's kind of the same thing. You can do it, but it's not natural. It's not the way that you do it when you are just not paying attention to your hands. So when you're animating, just keep that little rule in mind. Closing your hand, pinky first. It's not a solid rule that you have to follow all the time, but like pinky first. When you open, in the direction that you're going. So with this character, we have the character's wrist opening up, and he's just kind of doing this, where he's opening up, and it's not going in a specific direction. It's just kind of dragging open. And in that case, it's usually kind of the index finger a little bit first. Our index finger tends to be a little bit more active, I guess you could say, in the way we move. It tends to stick out compared to the rest. So with that in mind, I can just try to delay the other fingers a little bit. I'm going to take the pinky and ring finger, just take their animation, and I'm going to delay it 1 frame. So already we get that offset in there. I'm going to take my index finger and I'm going to advance it 1 frame. This way it kind of extends a little bit sooner. I could have taken the middle finger and offset that as well. The problem is if I did that, I'd have to offset the pinky and ring finger 2 frames, which is going to be too late for the pull. So I'm kind of playing around with that middle section there. So suddenly we get this. See how that hand kind of opens up a little bit more interestingly? We just get that nice offset. There we go. Now, we're going to have to do a little bit of manual posing here because this finger, the ring finger it shares a tendon. So the pinky and ring finger share a tendon. It's why you can't bend your pinky all the way without your ring finger also pulling through. It also gets affected by the middle finger. So if I raise my middle finger here, you can see that the ring finger wants to move as well. So as the hand starts to open up here, I just want to make sure that the ring finger starts to come up a little bit as well. Not much, but I want to keep it connected. Just a little bit. Okay. So we get that. Now this is not refined yet. This is just kind of blocking the hands in to get the base motion. We can refine it later. Now another thing to keep in mind is that when you open your hands, the end joints are a little offset from the rest. So for example, if you close your hands and you watch the joints, the tip of your fingers are not going to start bending until just a little bit later. They stay a little straighter. Same thing when you open your fingers, they will tend to have a little bit of a delay or even a lead sometimes. So you can offset those as well if you wanted to. In this case, I'm not going to worry too much about that. Instead, what I'll do is once I get into the polish stuff, I'll actually pose out the hands so I can get some really nice poses. Like right here, this is not a good pose. It's boring and flat. Look at that. Ugh. All the fingers are even. So I'm just getting the base motion in there, and from there I can refine it and make it better. So let's kind of call that here for now. We've got that base motion in place. Or no, let's actually finish this up. As much as I would like to move on to the wave, I really want to get these hand poses more appealing. Curse me and my inability to focus on something else. Believe you would grow a bit faster the other route. So when you join a big studio, you won't get too much time stuck in those small shot frames. Exactly. Yeah, so starting at small studios, you actually go up the ladder, the job ladder a little faster. It'll be much easier to become a lead animator or supervising animator at a small studio than a big one. So if you work in small studios, you're actually going to be able to get a higher position faster. And then when you apply to a big studio, you can say, hey, I was a supervising animator. Hire me as a supervising animator. It actually pays off in many ways. Let's see. And Toxiana, hello! So, let's go through, and I'm just going to basically look for hand poses and try to improve them. So for example here, this hand pose, I want to bring that in a little bit more. Maybe let's not straighten this joint out quite so soon. Keep that a little bit more bent. even here. Let's keep that a little bit more bent. So one thing I'm looking for in hand poses is a curve in the fingers. So you see here how we go from the thumb up, and we're starting to get this kind of curve, but then it kind of breaks and it kind of gets this weird like knock in the arc of the fingertips here. That to me is unappealing. So I'm gonna go in here and try to push that arc throughout all the fingers. Something a little bit more like this. Now we get that arc starting to flow through. Not perfect yet. Let's take that middle finger and kind of offset it upwards a little bit. Now we're starting to get that arc. So it's just kind of pushing little elements like that. It's not big changes all the time. It's not like you have to pose out the hand to be totally like super crazy. But as long as you're looking for those arcs in the fingertips, you can get a huge difference in your posing. The other thing that's good to look at is your spacing in the fingers. So make sure that the spacing, the way the fingers are separated, is just dynamic and interesting. Yeah, I think I can get away with a little bit more bend here. Okay, this finger can come in just a little bit more. I wanted some drag on there. So by pushing it in this way, it's going to give the feeling of drag. It's going to push the kind of line of action flow of the fingers through just a little bit more. Maybe a little too much there. So something like that. Adds that extra drag in there. This one, see how the pinky is following the silhouette of the hand? I can exaggerate that here, and suddenly we've got a better silhouette. So it's little changes, but it makes a big difference overall. And you can go in like super deep on this if you wanted to. There's no like rule of how far you should or should not go on hand posing. As long as it's appealing, that's really it. Do you save all the streams? Yes. So all the streams are recorded, and if you just go to the videos page, you can find a whole collection of the streams and demos that I've done. They only last for about 30 days, but nowadays I'm also highlighting them, which is a feature you can do on Twitch, which basically saves them permanently. So when I do those, I cut them down to just the individual demos as much as I can. So at this point, we've got quite a few different demos on all sorts of things. Modeling, we've got, I think we've got a little bit of basic rigging stuff. What else do we have? We have just a little bit of everything, really. Yeah, some of them are 3 years old. There are a whole bunch that I haven't re-uploaded yet. They're kind of still on my hard drive. This was before I knew about the highlight feature on Twitch. But I'm hoping to get those up when I get some free time. It's the big crux of everything is free time. Okay. There's something about the finger motion right in here that it's feeling a little weird. I know what it is. It's that pinky joint. It's too straight at the beginning. What it's doing is it's causing the hand to not have contrast visually. So if I bend this up here, what that's going to do, even if it's not like fully contracted, is as the hand kind of comes out, let's zoom in here, it's going to allow us to see that difference. Feel the hand relaxing a little bit. It'll also make a bigger contrast when the hand kind of gets dragged here. So something like that. So, yeah, all of a sudden just doing that, as he pulls his hand away, we feel that change in there. Now, the big thing I want to do is make sure that it's not changing too soon. So let's kind of pull that up there a little bit. There we go. Maybe a little too late there. So, something like that. There we go. Not a big change, but it just makes it more visually contrasting and a little bit more dynamic. You'll hear me say that a lot. For anyone who's been in the streams for a while, you're probably tired of hearing me just say, oh, it's more dynamic or visually interesting. But that's really, when I'm posing a lot of this out, that's my thought process is I want things to feel like there's a change, like there's a reason to watch it. And if your shot is just doing something like this and there's no change in anything, what's the point? Now, with that said, sometimes we don't want a change, but we have to ask ourselves if that's the goal. Is the goal that the shot should feel the same? Should it feel like the character isn't changing, like there's something very still and creepy about it? Or maybe they're just shocked and they don't move. There's a reason for it. In this case, I want this hand to be interesting. It's opening up. And if it's opening up but there's not a visual change, what are we doing? So it's just one of those things that I tried to pay a lot of attention to. Okay, let's say we've got that hand close enough. We can do a whole other pass later. At this point, we're pretty much here at frame 47. I'd need to retime my bookmarks a little bit. What if I can? Click on this and drag. No. Can I edit the bookmark? I want this to be 47. And then this one. Edit 47. There we go. This way I just have a better range here. At this point, we need to reblock this wave. And there's a few different ways I can do this. I could use layers. I could I can do all sorts of things really. But the first thing I definitely want to do is I want to take this curve and I want to buffer it. Just take that, the whole thing, even the fingers here. At this point, I'm pretty sure what I have is better than what I had originally, so I don't need to keep it in play. I'll also save and version up. It's a good thing to do. So that if something goes wrong, I can always reset. And I'm ready to block this new section in, which is 47 to about 76 or 67. Read that backwards. So I've got 20 frames here that I'm going to be working on. Now, I've got people pushing me into a different career until I get an animation job. And it's worrisome because I feel if I apply to something else or go to college for something else, I'm stuck with that forever and I will never be an animator ever. But I've also been told that people go through different careers in their lifetime and this will be temporary. I'm not sure if you can really answer this, but do you have any advice for that stuff? That's a really good question, and is what they say true? So the first thing I will say is that is true. And let's actually go full screen for this because we're going to be talking for just a second. That is true. You will get different careers in your life. That happens. For example, before I was an animator, I was a baker. That was my career for 4 years. My brother and I were bakers before we became animators. To be fair, the baking job started off as just a way to make money for animation school, but 4 years is the start of a career. We could have kept on going with that. We could have just been bakers for the rest of our lives. Before that, we used to do web design, and we thought that was going to be our career. I know people who have started animation and they were in the military. They were doctors, lawyers, psychiatrists, engineers, architects. And not just like, oh, they went to school. No, that was their job. That was their career for many, many years. Animation is not something that you have to start when you're young. It's nice too, because if you know that you want to do it, like follow your dreams. But anyone can do it at any time. I know someone who started learning how to animate when they're 60. And they're working at a studio. You can do that. Like, ideally, I'm guessing you don't want to wait until you're 60 to start your animation career, but you don't have to do it right away. So with that said, if you go to college for something else that's not animation, it's not going to destroy your chances of becoming an animator. Not at all. The only thing it'll do is potentially delay it. The other thing to keep in mind is a lot of the kind of money situation. So for example, if you go to college for something other than animation, you're paying for college, and college is not cheap. So if you want to then go to an animation school, like it's kind of lots of extra stuff, lots of extra money to pay. So financially, that's a decision that everyone has a different option on. Some people it won't matter too much. Others, well, you only get one chance at college and that's it. So it's a very personal thing right there. In the end though, don't worry about it making you not be able to go to animation. If anything, as long as you're picking another career choice that you like, so maybe, okay, it's not animation, but maybe it's something else that you really enjoy, and maybe not as much as animation, it's something that you can fall back on if you want to. And that's not a bad thing. So yeah, I don't know if that really answers your question or not, but it's really not being afraid that unless you start early, you're never going to be an animator. That is not true at all. Like, I started learning animation when I was 24. I thought I was too old. It's like, nope, I'm too old. I see all these 19-year-olds starting animation. What have I done for the last 5 years? I'm going to fail in animation. And now looking back, I realize,
what kind of stupid young person was I? Like, I see people now in their 30s and 40s learning animation, and it's like, I was 24. Like, I had so much time. um, as long as you're passionate about it, as long as you're willing to learn, it's never too late. So, yeah, don't worry about that too much. Um, let's see. Before graduating, I was given an opportunity to take an internship and later work for VFX. Nice. Stuff like that for movies. I did not want to do it. I want to work on games as a character artist. That was a year ago. I'm happy I decided to go my own route. A couple months ago, I got hired, and this summer, a game I worked on got published. Oh, that's awesome. That's so cool. So, yeah, and then I was a web developer up to last year. I got my first animation job at 32. So, yeah, it's never too late. The big thing is if animation is the thing you want to do, is the thing that like nothing else is important. This is your dream. You might want to push for that a little bit more. With that said, it also depends, like, are there jobs in your area? As you're trying to progress to your dream of being an animator, will you be able to sustain yourself? What do you want to work on as you're building up to be an animator? It doesn't just have to be working at a like minimum wage job. It could be something else. So yeah, don't feel pressured to start right away. I was 14. I felt animation was purpose. Nice. See, you're lucky that you have 10 years ahead of me to realize that animation was a thing you wanted to do. I only realized animation was even a possible thing for me to do because I'm way out in the country. There's no animation schools out here. I only realized that I could do it when I was like 20, 22-ish. And it's like, oh, there's online animation schools. Let's do that. So, yeah, it's definitely one of those things where as long as you push for it, you'll make it. I started animation school at 33 and I graduated this summer. Oh, congrats! I know there's a lot of work I need to do until I'm hired, but I feel confident that I belong in the animation industry. It is a fun industry. There's a lot of cool people here. I was 22, I had no idea what I was going to do. Now I'm 24 and life feels like it started for me. For me, it was similar. Like, when I was in my, like, just 20, it's like, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was just doing random things. Like, I did web design, I did some construction, I baked for 4 years. I didn't know what career I wanted until I jumped into animation, which was around 24, and it's like, this is what I want to do. This is what I love to do. And even with that said, once you're in animation, I need to enunciate. Once you're in animation, nothing's stopping you from exploring other things as well. So now that I'm an animator, some things that I'm trying to do in my free time, whenever that happens, I want to learn how to draw. I want to learn how to do 2D animation. I want to learn how to do storyboarding and concept art. I'm trying to do that as much as I can. Just because you've achieved your goal of animation doesn't mean that you can't then expand into other things. Or it could be something unrelated, like baking. Maybe once you become an animator, it's like, I really want to learn baking. You're still an animator, that's your career, but you can expand into these other things. Life is all about trying new things and just learning new skills and enjoying life. Not letting it just stagnate and go, well, I'm doing this now and that's what I'm going to do till I die. Yay. No, have fun, learn new things, do new things, explore new things. So, yeah, it's a fun journey. So, hopefully that helps. So let's see here. We're at the wave. So for the wave here, I've got a few different options that I can kind of choose from. And let's see. I feel like people telling Mercer that have no bad intentions with the advice concerning something else. If they care, they're probably going to tell you to do the safest route. That's the other thing. Like, a lot of times animation is a career that not many people understand. A lot of people just kind of don't really realize that a lot of things are animated. Like, I'll talk to my family about cartoons, and a lot of my family can't tell the difference between a 2D cartoon and a 3D cartoon. They don't know when anything is animated versus just live action versus like that kind of stuff. They don't pay attention to that. That's not what they're interested in. So when, as like starting out, you tell people, "Oh, I'm going to be an animator," it's like, what's that? I know what a doctor is. I know what a lawyer is. I know what construction work is. I know what a baker is. An animator, you sit down and you move a puppet. Like, they don't understand the whole process and what the whole goal of it is. So, yeah, match moving. Trying to explain match moving to someone, I can imagine that conversation, especially if they've got no experience with that whatsoever. And that's not a bad thing, but it does mean that those people, when you tell them that's what my career is going to be, that's what I want to do with my life, justifiably, one of their first reactions is, I don't know what that is, and I'm scared they're making a mistake. Now, there is levels of scared where it starts to get unhealthy. Like, I know some people who went to animation school and their family disowned them because they didn't want to become doctors or lawyers. Basically, the family went, "Hey, you're going to throw your life away? Fine, you do it on your own." And they just disowned them and went, "Go on." That sucks. That is, like, that's way too far. But if it, most of the time, for reasonable people, it's just being scared that this career that they're scared of a career that they don't understand and don't have any relation with. So I'm being pushed to that. Oh, nursing. Nursing is pretty good in Canada. It is a hard job, though. I will say that. Unless you're really passionate about being a nurse, it can really... Let me just put it this way. It's a hard job. My family, my father's a paramedic or was a paramedic. A lot of his friends were paramedics, nurses, doctors, things like that. It's not easy in a lot of ways. It's physically not easy because, well, as a nurse, you have to be able to lift a patient. So you have to be physically strong. You have to be able to deal with a lot of traumatic things. Your shifts are long. It's hard, but it is rewarding. Just watching my family and my family's friends, they really enjoyed what they did because they were helping people. They were actively trying to make people better. And that's a really good feeling. With that said, unless you really are passionate about it, it's a hard job. So yeah, just watch out for that. And watch out in the sense of do some soul searching and be upfront with your family on whether that's something that you even want to do. Some people just don't like it at all. But the other thing is, if it's free, you can always explore it. And if you don't like it, you can always back out. So yeah, we're trying to make people happy too. Yes. We're just doing it in a different way. Which, the arts are such a fun thing. Unfortunately, people don't appreciate the arts as much as they should. So let me go into the wave here. So with the wave, I know that I want to hold from probably 67-ish to the end. We'll see. I might add a few more. But the big thing is going to be the wave kind of needs to be reblocked out. So let me just do that. I'm just going to delete the whole hand animation here. Whoop, it's gone. Haha. All of our hard work kaput. And I'm just going to make sure, let me actually undo that. I'm going to set a key here on frame 47. That's going to be the start. I set a key on every control right there. That way I know that it's basically ready to go. Go to the end, set a key on that. That way I know exactly where I'm going to end up in. And then I'm just going to delete all the animation in the middle. Just take all that, poof, gone. Okay. So with this, I can now block in the new hand animation because I want to make the wave a little faster. And I could try to work in the hand animation I already had, but I might end up just wasting more time trying to fix things versus just rebuilding it from scratch. So I'm kind of going right back to blocking. That's not a bad thing. And this is typically what's called the wall off method. So the wall off method, for anyone who's curious, is you go to the beginning of the section that you're going to clean up, set a key, go to the end, set a key, delete everything in the middle. You've walled off, you've created 2 lines, 2 walls on either side, and now you can work within the center to rebuild it up, which is very nice. And it actually works very quickly too. So, see, Sunday's Times survey stated people found artists the most non-essential job, but all the avatars near each job were made by an artist. Yeah, that's the thing. Can you imagine how it would look without pictures? That's the thing. Whenever you see an ad like that, like I remember just recently there was a ballet one where there's this girl who's like tying her ballet shoes, and basically the art is the ad is going like, I forget the girl's name. Like basically this girl is wasting her life going into ballet. She could be an engineer or something like that. Like the arts aren't important. Be an engineer. And it's like, okay, but someone had to make the type font. Someone had to get the picture. Someone had to put it all together and design it. Someone had to color correct it all. This ad was made by artists. And you're saying that artists aren't necessary and that they should be engineers. And it's like, exactly like you said, like, okay, get an engineer to make this picture then and see how well it turns out. If you got rid of artists and that, like you said right there, movies, books, music, like we're listening to music right now where this is an art, like you're watching media right now. I'm going to be watching a movie tonight, hopefully, Over the Moon. I'm excited for it. What would life be without art? It would be boring. It would just be Times New Roman, black font on a white background, and that's it. Like just imagine a newspaper, but not even a nicely formatted newspaper, because that's still an art. Typeface is an art. So it's just Times New Roman, like font 12, blocks of text. That's what would be newspapers or websites. It's like it would be so horrible. Artists are crucial, not so much for living per se, but for living in a world that's worth living in. I guess you could say. So yeah, it's, when you see that, don't listen to them. Artists are important, and it might feel like we're not doing as much. For example, like again, my family was paramedics and doctors and stuff like that. When you see that, it's like, oh man, am I not giving back enough? Am I not helping people enough? Am I not doing enough? But keep in mind that all those patients who are in a hospital and waiting for tests, waiting for things, kids who have to sit in a hospital all day who are sick, part of what makes them get through the day is getting to watch a cartoon on TV and getting to laugh and getting to experience life in a video game, getting to do something that is not sitting in a hospital bed all day. Making these things helps people. It does. So don't feel bad about being an artist. Don't let anyone make you feel bad about being an artist. So yeah, I could go on a rant on that so much. It's one of my big pet peeves, is like not treating artists as if it's a crucial job. Yes, it's not crucial in the sense that if we don't eat, we'll starve. If we don't listen to music, we'll get bored. But if that's your whole life, what's the point of living if you're just bored the whole time and just kind of waiting for the end? So let's block it that way before I go in a whole other rant there. So I'm starting at frame 47. Now the timing for the wave that I'm thinking of is it's going to be 3 2 3 3 2 3 2 4. So that's the amount of oh yeah, frame 47, where we've been at for the last little bit. So I want to pretty much start here, and so this pose is actually okay. I'll bring that back. So this is going to be my extreme screen right. From there, I need to block out the rest of the waves. And the way I'm going to do this first is I'm just going to time it out, see if I have enough time. In my reference, I did 9 waves. So the first one is going to be 3 frames. So that's going to go back to screen left. So from 49, that'll be 52, set a key. And then it'll be 2 frames, 54, set a key. 3 frames, 3 frames. So 57, 60, and then 2 frames, 3 frames, 2, 4. So I'm just getting the basic motion in here so that I can figure out if this is going to be enough. So you can see here, I'm not going to have as big of a hold at the end. I don't know if I'm like that. We'll see. I'm using my reference as a guide first, and from there I'm going to try to exaggerate it. I might take out a couple of waves. So let's just kind of block this in super rough. So the hand goes over to the side and then back there. And I'm just going to copy this pose over. So key, key, key. Do the same thing with the other hand. So there, copy that, key. Oops, make sure I'm, okay, screen right, screen left, screen right, a key, a key, set a key. And actually, let me take that hand and I'm going to just take my translate curves. So the translation is just this nice even motion. I'm just going to take my curves and switch the buffer on them again. Boop. So this is where the buffer curves come in handy. I just brought that back, and now it's just the rotations that I should be focusing on. So hand comes up right there. And then, okay, I'm going to have to exaggerate that rotation. So let's kind of push that a little bit more there, just so we can see it. And then let's just look at our rotations here. Key, key, key. So we get this. Now it's a little too much because the hand just is doing this the whole time. Maximum rotation. I'll need to taper that down and get that nice overlap in there. Oh, that's so awesome, Mamba. Glenn is such a cool person. I got to meet him a couple of times and he's so nice. That is so cool. Okay. Now let me actually, I'm just going to do a cached playback here. And let's actually just focus on the ending here. I don't need to focus on the whole shot. This way we save some cached motions. Okay. His hand just looks like it's vibrating. Is that what I want? I feel like it's too much. even if I was to slow it down a little bit and like favor the poses, I feel like it could... It's just going to be weird. I'm going to have to make the motion very small in order for it to read correctly, or else it'll just like pop back and forth, back and forth. So I might just take out 2 of the waves and then retime it a little bit. So let's add some frames in these sections. So maybe 1 frame here, 1 frame here, 1 frame there. Add a frame there and there. Okay, let's see how this feels. Okay, a little better. I think that'll give me room to play with without having it be too poppy. Okay, we'll see. So with that, we've got frame 49. I know frame 49 is pretty good. That's not bad. Let's actually get the range of motion in first here. So as he goes in, I want the wave to build up in intensity. So as he starts to wave, the first wave might be a little small, and then it'll get a little bit bigger. That's not the right key. And let's actually... keys, no. Play key ticks from channel box. So this is something that's very useful. I'm only animating the rotations right now. I don't want to worry about the translations. But if you look at the timeline here, it's showing all the keys. Translations, rotations, everything. So if I right click on this, I can switch my display key ticks. Active means that it's going to show all the keys for the active object. If I set this from channel box, it's going to set it based on what I have selected in the channel box. So if I select my translations, it'll show only those. Rotations, it'll show only those. So by just switching this, I can simplify my view here and just get a little bit of a cleaner look. So with that, it just kind of makes it a little easier to block things out without losing track of where my keys should be. It also makes stepping through much easier too. Okay. So he starts here, he whips his hand around, comes up, waves. Let's actually make that pretty big. And then it comes back here. Let's not break the wrist. He waves again. Let's maybe make this one not quite as big. Now, I'm going to have to add motion to the wrist. I'm not worrying about that right now. I'm just worrying about the actual range of motion on the wave. Bring that back up here. And then the last wave is going to be the smallest one. Oh no, his shorts. The joy of cache playback. Let's actually turn that off. Don't need that right now. So this is something, if ever you start noticing geometry being left behind, you'll notice this with eyes and teeth a lot. It could be cached playback is causing some issues for you. And then I want that hand to relax at the end there. So let's actually not bring that back even close to all the way. Okay. So we've got that. Our range of motion. With that, the next thing is, do I want the hand to slowly rotate over time? Right now, it's kind of just resetting back and forth, but as we wave, we can kind of do this, where it's waving, but it's rotating. I think I kind of want a little bit of that. So let's see if we can kind of add that in a little bit. And where am I ending up here? Right there. Okay. So, we've got that. Let's do a quick cache playback and see what the animation is looking like. It's going to be terrible, but I just want to make sure the range of motion feels decent. Okay. Yeah, it's kind of shaky there. So what's happening is at the end, he's not actually waving anymore. So wave, toot, toot, back. Could also be that I was skipping frames. Okay. See. Now, actually, there is another way I could do this, which might make my life a whole lot easier. And that's using animation layers. So the thing that is going to be problem here. Oh, animating a character with their hands in their pockets pretty hard? No, that would be pretty easy. You can either use constraints or just switch the space on the hand. So for the AM rigs, you select the IK control and you're going to have the space attribute right there. And you can switch it to hips and then the hands will just follow the hips. Done. You don't need any constraints, nothing. And then when you have to let go, you just switch the space back to root. So it follows the root control and you're done. So it's very, very easy. So yeah, not hard at all. Do horses swing their legs out or they can't do that? They can't really do that. Their feet tend to come inwards a little bit more. It's one of those things like cats and bears have shoulders that are a little bit more human, which basically means that if you look at their front feet, they can do this. They can reach out. It's why cats and bears can climb trees. The reason a dog can't climb a tree isn't that they don't have claws. They have claws. They could scramble up if they could, but they don't have the shoulder structure for it. They can't bring their legs out like this. It's why when dogs dig, they only ever dig this way, and they're not doing like this and pushing the dirt out to the side. Their shoulders don't allow them to do that. So they can't grab around a tree and pull themselves up. So horses are similar. They don't really have that ability to open up their legs this way very easily. There is flexibility in that, but it's not something that is naturally built into their shoulder structure. So you're not going to get these big, like wide-legged horses. Now, with that said, in animation, we could change that and go all out and really make these crazy wobbly-legged horses. That's not a problem. But if you're trying to go for a more realistic horse, you want to keep that shoulder structure in mind. And AutoKey, hello! So, looking at the hand pose here, one thing I'm kind of feeling is that already I feel like I'm going to be fighting the rotation and translation of the hand as I'm trying to get that wave layered onto it. I'm going to be trying to get nice clean arcs, nice clean motion, and by animating the wave, I'm essentially making my life much harder because it needs to have some shake in the arm, it needs to have rotations, it needs to still move in a nice clean arc. It's going to be a pain. So let's go back a step. I'm going to go back to my buffer curves, bring back my old wave. Let's save that buffer again. This way I can use that as a starting point. Okay, so with the hand, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to focus on getting a nice clean arc. So get the hand from basically 49 here, and then just get a nice clean motion all the way to the end. Right there. Now the hand comes through, and we get that. Simple and clean. From there, let's actually exaggerate the arc. Get that nice arc through here, this wave. If we actually look at the motion trail here, it's actually going to be very boring. So right there, see how it's kind of flat in a lot of areas? Like right here, it's just flat, and then it goes down, and then it's just flat, and then it kind of it's not that interesting. So let's make that interesting. Let's make that whole arc of the wave fun. So as he comes up here, let's take our translate. I believe X is going to be the main one here. No, let's go Y. So we'll fix the Y first. Let's keep it going up a little bit more. Just a little bit. So as they... Okay, turn off cache playback so we don't get that weirdness. He brings his hand up. And arc that up just a little bit more. Make it a little bit more energetic. And then ease in here just a little bit. So we're trying to just keep that momentum going. And what I want is that hand to kind of come down and lead the motion. So he kind of waves, and then we get this as opposed to just doing this, where the hand and the body are locked together. How are you able to zoom into your RenderCam? This is 2D pan and zoom, which is very good because 2D pan and zoom makes you zoom in without changing the perspective. You just need to hold the backslash key, or backslash, I believe. Hold that down and then middle mouse drag or right click drag to zoom in. And you can see I can zoom in all the way in here, and it's not changing the perspective. If I want to really focus on just refining the eye based on what the audience is going to see in the shot camera, this is the tool that you'd use. Or in this case, I want to track my arc here. I can zoom in and it's not changing the perspective as if I'm actually zooming in and out. So I can get that arc exactly what it'll look like from this view as well. So if you tap the backslash, it'll turn that on and off. So with this, I can really go in here and take this hand and let's get some refinement in there. So I want that to really kind of lead down a little bit more here. Arc down, and look at that. Look how flat and boring these curves are. So right through here. Actually, let's see. Maybe I'm just going to see what happens if I do the opposite. Let's hold that up here. Yeah, this is what I don't want. See how the hand is kind of locked in with the body? That's boring. I just need to add a little ease right in there. Let's actually just take this key. Add a tiny little ease right there. And then let's exaggerate that arc of the arm. Now I'm trying to push this way more than is necessary. I can always tone it back afterwards. But I'd rather go too far first and then have to bring it back than not go nearly far enough and then just have boring animation. So let's say something like this. But now our arc is just a little bit more interesting. I feel like this could be a little lower too. Okay. We're getting that nice arc in there. As the body settles down here, I feel like it could start coming up a little sooner. So I'm just offsetting some keys so that the hand kind of leads the slightly upwards motion there. A little bit more like that. Okay. Let's call that for now. Okay. Translate X side to side. Look at that poor sad curve. All blumpy and bad. Let's try to clean that up. So he comes up. I want a little bit of a hold here. That's good. Then as it comes through, I wonder if I can just bring it back a little bit. Let's see, how do I want to do this? Trying to think of what kind of arc do I want. Do I want the hand to lead out and then come back in? Or do I want it to kind of come out or like almost have it feel like the body is pushing the hand out? So I could, for example, take this and like push it way out here. So now we get that hand really leading that motion there, and I just have to arc it through. That's definitely going to push that into a different type of wave than that I'm working on so far. But I'm going to try to keep it simpler here. Let's try to exaggerate this. So it kind of comes in and then it'll kind of scoot outwards. Okay. So just trying to think of the arc and how I want this to progress through the shot. So something like that maybe. You can see the difference between the old curve. It's not a huge difference, but I'm going to exaggerate that arc. So it comes up and then swoops through. We get that little overshoot right at the end there. Now, one thing I have to watch out for is that the hand doesn't feel like it locks onto the shoulder. I might just push this up a little bit more. What I mean by locks off onto the shoulder is as it comes down here, look at the spacing between the thumb and the shoulder. I want that to not feel like it just sticks together for too many frames, which it was doing earlier. So by doing this, we get a little bit more of a variation. Okay. So something like that. Translate Z honestly is not going to be huge on this. I can probably just clean it up because right now it's just weird. So he kind of waves, and then it should kind of just arc as I'm doing this, in and then out, most likely. I could keep that very simple, which it is not right now. So as it comes up, this should probably be the most extreme in, like that. And then I'm just gonna try this and take all that and then just use the ease tool here. Just simplify that. Nice and clean. If I need to exaggerate anything, I can do that later. Okay. We've got a little bit more of an interesting arc here. Let's see how it feels playing it back. It might be totally wrong. We'll see. The main thing I'm trying to focus on is just making that hand motion appealing. If the hand motion itself isn't appealing, we add a wave on top, it's not going to look good anyway. I feel like the translate Y could be exaggerated at the bottom there. There we go. So you can see how that has an appeal to the hand motion. It kind of comes up, holds, comes down. So there's this little bit of visual dynamic energy in there, and there's no wave yet. So when we build a wave on top of that, hopefully that'll make it feel interesting. It's the same concept when I talk about the hips and we try to animate the hips in a very clean way. And honestly, I actually kind of like it without the wave. It just kind of feels cool. That drag in the wrist. I actually kind of like it. But if I can make this feel interesting and appealing before getting into anything else, it'll just mean that my animation is going to be better for it. If this isn't interesting to look at on its own, just the wrist motion, I haven't achieved what I want. So just something to be aware of whenever you're doing any type of animation like this. When you're dealing with complex motions like a wave or anything like that, try to get the core of it feeling good first. Once you do that, the rest should follow pretty well. Okay. So we've got that in place. I feel like the translate X here is a little extreme. The way it comes back there. I'm going to reduce the overshoot here. That's a little better. And then I can push the elbow as well too. So once I get this in place, I can use the elbow. So for example, as it's coming out here, let's see, where's my elbow PV? Could be this one? No, like one. I can use that to let the elbow kind of pull out first. So that pulls the wrist out. We'll see. It's not bad the way it is right now, but I don't know if it's what I want to have happen. Especially right here at the end, the elbow feels quite dragged inwards. I think I can pull that out just a little. And then clean this up too. Ugh. Okay. So arm comes up. That's actually not bad. Let's actually just ease this in a little bit. Okay. Elbow comes out. And then here, I'm gonna just try. Oh, those poor shorts. Oh, that poor face. Try to see what happens if the elbow leads. Just see what feeling we get out of this. Makes his arm up. Elbow comes through. And then let's loop it back in a little bit. Comes out and then in. Okay. See how that feels. Oh, do you animate it with reference? If so, do you fully follow everything the reference does, or do you follow the main poses of it and exaggerate here and there? I use the main poses and the main kind of overall feeling of the reference, and then from there I try to add in my own touch to make something unique that isn't just the reference. If I'm just copying the reference at all times, the problem with that is, what's the point of animating it then? You're just doing what the reference is doing. You might as well just shoot a live action movie. So I like to try and take the core of the reference and then exaggerate it into something a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more interesting. So that's my typical workflow when I'm dealing with reference, is just getting that the heart of it. Now, sometimes I'll follow it a little bit more closely than others. It depends on the reference or the type of shot. For example, if it's a VFX style shot, something a little bit more, I guess you could say, realistic, then I'll tend to follow the reference a little bit more closely. If it's more of a cartoony shot, then I'll start to focus more on just the core of it and then pull away much sooner. It really just depends. Let's add a little drag to that wrist there. And again, we've got the cache playback. So weird. I'm just going to block in a little bit more with the wrist here. Let's keep it actually pretty straight as well. So rotations. I'm going to add the backwards bend of the wrist later as I get into the wave itself. Right now I just want to keep the motions here a little clean. Just get some nice drag in the wrist. Overlap it right here. comes through, overlaps, and then settles. And Blaze, hello! Tej, how's it going? So let's see here. What do I want to do? Let's ease that into a stop right there. I also need another key in here, just to clean up my curves. I don't like having sections that don't have enough keys, because then I can't get the ease in and out the way I want it to be. Okay. So it goes up there, drags back. We get that. Drag a little overlap and settle. So I'm not doing a huge amount with the wrist here. You'll notice it's just small changes. But the goal here is to build a good base that I can use when I add in the wave after. If I have this kind of motion of the wrist, this drag and everything working pretty well, the wave should just build up on top of it naturally. Now I'm trying not to go too far with the drag on this, because honestly the wave motion is, when you're waving, your wrist is under tension, so you can't really wave when your wrist is just loose and floppy. That's just overlap. If you're doing this, your wrist is already active. So I'm trying not to overdo the drag and things, but I can still exaggerate a little bit. So let's take a look here. How does that feel? Not bad. The wrist is a little loose at the end, but I kind of like the round arc that I'm getting there. Okay. So you can see how that wrist is suddenly much more interesting to look at, especially if we kind of compare. Let's take this and switch our buffer curves again and kind of look at what we had before. Again, buffer curves are very nice for this kind of thing. So we've still got the same rotations we just did, but now we're going back to that old arc of the wrist. And let's see if we actually made it better or worse. Yeah, so here, see how the hand just goes up and then it's like diagonal, just straight, and then it kind of just stops and the wrist dies right at the end. With the new one, we get a little bit more of an arc, a little bit more kind of visual oomph to that motion. Okay, yeah, so it's just a little, but it makes it interesting. Okay, good. So we've got all of this in place. Yay! Now what do we do? Well, the big thing that I don't want to do, let me actually save this. The big thing I don't want to do is mess up this curve, because we've just made this really good. We've gone through and we've made sure that the arc is really nice, all of that. The rotation of the wrist feels good. There's a drag. If I start adding that wrist waving here like that, when you do that, not only are you rotating it, which is going to mess up all my rotations, you also have to translate the wrist. If I do this, look at how my wrist is moving, the actual part down here. It's not still. It's not like this is absolutely frozen. I can't even, I have to really press my arm in to keep only the hand moving. If you're relaxed, you get a little bit of side to side to that wrist. That's going to mess up all my arcs. It's going to mess up all of these nice clean curves that I've done. So I'm going to use an animation layer. And I'm really just going to add it onto the wrist here. So I'm going to add the wrist into a new animation layer. So to do this, select the wrist. I'll hit the new animation layer right here. Right there. Now it's empty right now. So I'll right click on that and add the selected object. Now, the big thing is I don't have to add all of the object. For example, I don't need the scales to be in the animation layer. I don't need the FK hand and all of this to be in there. If I go in here and right click, this will add all of those attributes and make a new duplicate of those in the animation layer. That's really what an animation layer is doing. It's allowing you to have multiple curves on the same axis or the same attribute. I only really want my translates and rotates. So instead, one way I like to do it is right click on the attributes here. So select them, right click, and then where is it? Add to selected layers right there. Let me go a little higher so you guys can see it right there. Boop. So that puts those into the new layer, but nothing else. So now if we look in my animation layer right here, I just have my translates and rotates. That's it. So we've got that. Let's actually call this wave, and then I always put underscore layer just for naming convention. So this is our wave layer. And what I want to do is I want to make sure that the mode is set to additive. If I set this to override, basically it's going to override any animation that's below it. So it's just going to go, okay, that animation doesn't matter. We're only doing this now. By having additive, it basically lets us add on animation on top of existing animation, which is exactly what I want. So what I can do here is I'm just going to set a key on 49. That's going to be our starting point. And make sure that we're on the wave layer. That's always helpful. And I'm actually going to set this to active now. There we go. So to make sure I don't animate on my base animation layer, I can even just lock that. This way we're only seeing our wave layer. And 49, we want to start here. 74, this is where we want to end. So I'll set a key there. Make sure that's exactly how I want it. And now let's try doing the same thing that we did before. Let's block in that wave. So I'm actually going to do, instead of the 9 waves, I'm probably going to cut it and just do a few less. So let's actually do 4 frames, set a key, 3 frames. This is kind of basing it off of my existing timing, which I can exaggerate later. 4 frames, 4 frames, 3 frames, and that's going to be, let's see, it's going to be right, left, right, left, right, left, done. Okay, so we'll do this amount of waves. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 waves. I think that's going to be a good amount without kind of just making the character do this, which is gonna might feel a little off for this type of motion that they're doing. Okay, so because we're working with an animation layer now, you can see that my curves are pretty simple. And if I want to create the wave motion, let's do this very basically. I'm just going to rotate the hand here. And let's zoom in on our curves. So make sure we're looking at all of our curves here. Right there. So we've got that. Rotate back to center. Let's wave again. Here. Rotate back to center. Then wave a little bit. Just exaggerate that pose. And there we go. So with this, we're building that wave on top of our existing animation. Now this definitely needs to be much bigger here. Let's really push that wave there. We can go about a 45-degree angle here, so I could really push this. Same thing here. We're gonna be waving. Let's wave. Wrong frame. So something like that. Is there any shortcut to select an FK chain? No. So for example, the spine here is an FK chain. We could select one part, but there's no way to just select the whole thing, because technically an FK chain is just a joint chain, and if we were to kind of hit a hotkey, it wouldn't really know where to start and end. So instead, what I like to do is, if I'm continually selecting an FK chain, like the spine, for example, middle back or lower back, middle back, upper spine, and I don't want to do that all the time, I'll just make a quick select set. So that, select all three, go to edit, or sorry, create, sets, quick select set. I'll call this spine, and I'll add it to the shelf right there. So now anytime I need to select the spine, boop, there we go. And what's nice about this is it makes it so that instead of having a shortcut key just for an FK chain, you can make selections for anything. I've got one that just selects just the eye controls, just the tongue controls, the whole face. I could make one that selects just the fingers on one hand, or the fingers on all the hands. Both hands. All the hands. How many hands are there? So this is a nice way because it's expansive and it's specific to what you need for a specific shot, which is very nice. So let's take a look at this here. So now we've got a wave building in here, and you can see how that wave, my curves here are very simple because they're just adding on to the animation that's built underneath it. So I can start to really refine this wave without losing the arc underneath. This is the power of animation layers. You make the base motion that you want, you make it really nice and clean, and now we can build on top of it and make something even more detailed, but still have the ability to clean up and refine in a nice, efficient way. So let me actually take a quick look at this here with cache playback just to make sure that it's working correctly. And the other nice thing is, if ever the wave doesn't work out, all we have to do is delete the animation layer and we're back to what we had before, which was actually really nice. There we go. So, is it working? Not quite yet. It's a little just kind of blah, 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 blah. It's very boring. That's the official term, blah, 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 blah. So let's try to make this a little bit more visually interesting. Now there's a few ways we can do this. The first thing is I just want to make sure that my key poses are exactly the way I want them to be. So one thing I do want to do is, let's actually key this here on 45. On this pose, I want this hand to just be a little bit further back, maybe a little bit further this way. Okay, refining that hand pose. Now, this is where studying your reference is very helpful. So, looking at this, we had a few notes. From screen right to screen left, the hand rotates backwards. From screen left to screen right, it rotates forwards. So, let's pay attention to that. So as it goes here, it's screen right. As it goes screen left, let's add a breakdown here. And on that breakdown, it's going to rotate backwards. So screen right to screen left, it rotates back. Let's do that. And then I'm going to just adjust my spacing so that it kind of favors the previous pose. So we get that, starting to round out that motion here. Okay. Let's break down this motion here. So as it goes forward from screen left to screen right, it's going to come forward ever so slightly. And once again, I want to just hold that rotation Y, which is going to be this way, just a little bit. So I'm trying to hold the extremes a little bit more. So it comes through here, and instead of just automatically starting to go back the other way, I want this to hold just a little longer. and then go fast. So you're going to notice these little fast motions in the middle. That's what I'm aiming for. Could exaggerate this curve a lot more here. In a production, the wave should be blocked out for approval, or would you only put in the polishing phase anyway? It really depends. Ideally, you would just block it out very basically, kind of like what I had done before. That way you're not kind of going too far before the studio goes, oh, no, that's not working. So I had it blocked out basically earlier. The problem with that is that it might not be quite right. But as long as the director or the supervising animator gets what you're trying to go for, that's usually okay. Now, there are certain motions that no matter what, it's just not going to look right. It's going to be weird and stilted, and you're trying to get this nice, complex like thing to read, and no matter what, it's feeling weird. In those cases, you'll need to block out a little bit more, or you could even say that you're starting to get into the refining of it a little bit more. There's really no one answer. It depends on, I guess you could just say, as long as it's readable and they're not misunderstanding what it is that you're trying to show them. That's really the end goal. If they are not getting it, if they are not reading the animation correctly, then we as the animators need to restructure what we're doing and kind of make it work. Wrist just snaps. Okay. It starts to come back. I'm gonna have to pull this hand pose back here just a little bit. I always love this song. See. I think I need a little bit more time right there. Ease that out there. So already this is starting to feel better. And really what I'm doing is I'm just building in the curves. Now it's a little all over the place right now. Especially right there. Okay. Stream comes forward. I think. Can I exaggerate that forward motion there? And then let's bring that forward just a little bit more. So it kind of comes forward and then back. Okay. Not bad, but there's some odd rotation going on right around here. And I think what it is the hands rotating a little too far this way. Or too far forward here. That could be it. I want it to rotate forward, but not so much that it's kind of losing the arc. Okay. Let's do a little bit of curve cleanup here. Just clean up these motions. Get that ease in and out just the way I want it. Okay. Let's see how this feels. There we go. So we're getting there. It still needs a lot of work, but you can see how this is much easier than, like, we had tried to block it out a little earlier. And when we did it, it was just like all over the place. And in order to fix it, to clean it, it would have been a huge effort, because every change we make is ruining the arc of the hand, of the wrist. And then we'd tweak that, and then we would try to get the wave working, but then that would, like, we get the wave working, but then we have to adjust the wrist, but that breaks the wave, and it snowballs all the time. We're constantly countering everything. With this method, all I'm focusing on is the wave itself. As long as I can get that the way I want it to be, I'm good. And it's very easy to just kind of break things down and focus on just these little elements. So for example, I want that kind of forward back motion. So I think that's going to be the rotate Y. And it's rotate Z and rotate Y. I'm getting a little gimbal lock there. Okay, that's not so bad. So in a situation like this, I'm getting gimbal lock. What could I do? Well, essentially what I could do, and there's my camera. I'm surprised it didn't die earlier. Come on, camera, live. Usually around the 3-hour mark is when the camera just gives up. Battery exhausted. Oh no, oh shoot, is it not plugged in properly? Could that be it? Oh no. Okay, I'll have to let that recharge there for a second. Let me actually just turn that off. Aha. This camera is, I feel sorry for this camera. It works so hard. I have so much appreciation for it. But anyway, what was I saying? I was doing something. Oh yeah, I'm getting gimbal lock on the wrist here. As I'm waving, the rotate Z and Y are both doing the same thing. So I have some options that I could try to do. One is, if the wrist allows it, some rigs have a gimbal control, which basically allows you to offset the control so that you're not animating everything on one thing here. You will have a second control that you can break up the rotations on. That is very nice. The big thing with that though is sometimes it's not quite enough. So I'm just trying to get my spacing working here. So if that happens, and let's say for example this gimbal lock, it needed to go. I just couldn't animate with this. It was ruining my animation, making everything just like a horrible mess. What I would end up doing is I would create a new constraint system, which would basically give me all of the rotations that I need in this section. So it would allow me to essentially create my own separate rotation channels, and how to put this, basically allow me to very quickly and easily block this in with each rotation independent from the other. So I would get no gimbal lock whatsoever. That is a great tool. I've actually demoed that on stream a couple of times. I don't know if it's still up on stream though. It's one of those videos that I didn't get uploaded in time. re-upload in time. So I'm hoping to get it up again soon. But basically it's just a very simple constraint setup, honestly. But it makes the world of difference. Okay. Keys start to come out. I think I can put another key here. So at this point, I'm almost keying this on ones just to get exactly what I want. It's a little overboard, honestly, but not a big deal. Which axis is this? Oh yeah, it translates. Don't need to look at my translates just yet. Ease that back just a little bit there. I want that nice quick transition right here. And then here, let's try to bring that a little bit more forward. Okay. Rotate Y. Comes through. And this is something I'm not a fan of, is that arc in the wrist. It's got a little bit too much overshoot in there, but that's on the base layer. I just have to remove that overshoot on the base layer and that should be fine. So the main thing that I'm feeling in the wave right now is that there's a little too much forward and back motion. So let's actually look at this from a different view here. If we look at it from the top, the hand is just kind of spinning, essentially. So changing my angle here is going to be very helpful in just kind of reducing that. So let's go through here. This is going too far back. So let's bring that down. Kind of just bring that forward throughout all of this. Now, as it comes through here, this is looking decent. This is too far back right there. Probably there too. So just toning this down a little bit. So that way we focus more on the side to side motion of the whole thing. Let's see. If I just delete this. Okay. That's a little better. The ending is a little weird still. Okay, let's exaggerate this. Get another little wave in there. So by doing this, essentially what I'm doing is kind of building into the next motion a little bit more cleanly. So it comes back, waves, and then goes into this, that ease there. Yeah, that's already better. Okay. So let's say, for sake of argument, this is basically where we're ready to go. I can now take my translate Z, I believe. Yep. And use this to block in a little bit of side to side motion on that wrist. Because like we talked about earlier, the wrist as you wave, it doesn't just kind of, this pose just freezes. Let me fix that. Not a fan of that. So let's bring this up just a little higher. So what's happening is that wrist on these two frames here felt like it wasn't really moving. Actually, let's bring this up a little faster here too. Just so it eases in a little bit more. Bring that forward just a little bit more. Bring that forward just a little bit more. There we go. So I'm just trying to create a better transition between all of these poses here. Get into that nice wave. Okay. Okay, cool. So, got that. Let's go back to our translate. So, I just need a little bit of side-to-side translation with this wrist here. And what I can basically do is just use my current motion that I have in here and block that in very easily. So, for example, as the wrist comes over screen right, let's push that a little bit more screen right. As it goes screen left, find the extreme right there. Let's push it a little bit more screen left. Let's look at our curve here. As it goes screen right, find that extreme right there. Put it screen right. Screen left, right there. Screen right. And then left. Just kind of put a little bit more in there. So we get that. Very basic, very easy. And essentially what we're doing is we're building in that connected feeling of the wrist over top of the nice clean arc that we had done before. Now on top of that, I can just take all of this. Let's offset it one frame. That way it kind of overlaps with the wrist instead. So it feels like the wrist motion is dragging the hand. And then let's just add some extra keys in here. Translate Z. Set some extra keys just to exaggerate the spacing here. So kind of ease in and out on all of these just a little bit. Make that a little bit more visually interesting. Okay. So now this might not work, but we'll see what we get. Yeah. So now you can see how that wrist feels tied in just a little bit to the motion of the wrist, instead of just the wrist being, sorry, the motion of the hand. Instead of the wrist just kind of doing its own perfect little arc, we now have this overlapping action to that wrist. If I feel like it's too much, I can just scale this down. And it's just adding on top of that nice, perfect arc that we had earlier. It doesn't mean that it's absolutely finished, but it's in there. And we can build off of that. Okay. So, from here, we could keep refining the wave. Honestly, it's just a lot of spacing stuff at this point. But let's actually just get in some quick finger motion. Now I'm going to have to go back to my base animation layer here. And there's just a few things that I want to make sure I get on the fingers. So for one, as the thumb comes out, as the thumb gets dragged back here, I want to add a little bit of drag to that thumb. So clean up that arc. So as it comes up in here, kind of bring that in just a little bit more. Then clean this up. Okay. So I want that thumb to come in. As he waves, we feel that drag in the thumb. As it comes through here, it hits this point. And before it changes direction, so let me drag the thumb there. So drag, thumb gets dragged over. I'll have to delete that key right here. It overlaps, and then as it changes direction, the thumb is the thing that's leading right here. That's the main thing that I really want to get here, is the thumb leading the action, which feels a little weird, but that's what happens. So the thumb leads the action, and then here it gets dragged and then catches up right around there. So it's just this kind of nice little overlapping action that is happening with the thumb throughout all of this. So it drags there. As it comes back, right here, the thumb should start to lead the action again. So, comes in. Let's offset one more frame here. Right here, that thumb should be leading back out. So we get this. You can see how that thumb, it kind of feels like it's pulling back right there. And I can exaggerate that a little bit more. So just a little bit of overlap in that thumb. Not much, but it's going to keep that finger just feeling a little bit more alive. Or sorry, not the finger, the hand. Now the same thing with these joints here. In my notes, this is where looking at your reference is very handy. The fingers straighten when the hand eases in screen left, and they bend when the hand eases in screen right. So that means that as we're looking at these curves here, I'm just basically going to be doing this. And I wonder if I can just use that. Yeah, let's just try doing it with just this rotate X here. I'm just going to look for the eases in and out. So, hand comes up. I could probably drag this a little bit more, honestly. But let's see. It's going screen right. So the fingers should maybe be a little bit more bent here. I'll clean up all the curves and stuff later. As you can see, they are a mess. Okay, so we've got that. So a little bit bent here. Now as they ease in, so not here on the extreme, but right around here, they're easing in screen left, fingers straighten. So let's kind of exaggerate that a little bit. Fingers ease in screen right, so maybe around here, we'll bend them. Then ease in screen left, so right around here-ish, they'll straighten. Ease in screen right, they bend. Then we'll let them straighten again, right around here. Not as much. And then they can relax at the end there. Okay. So with that, let's actually just push the eases ins and outs a little bit here. And we'll see what we get. Okay. Not much, but it's in there. The hand definitely feels like it's rotating too much. I might actually have to, as much as I didn't want to, I might have to create a constraint system for the wrist here. That gimbal lock is really throwing me off. Like right there. It's just causing the fingers to look like they spin way too much. The other thing I could also do is drag the fingers a little bit more. That might be actually what's causing the issue. The fingers rotating are causing a visual pop in the arc. So by dragging them back just a little bit, right through here, we can get a little bit more drag and then let that go a little faster right through there. Drag these back here. A little bit more like that. Now, fingers don't really drag that much, honestly. The big thing I'm trying to do here is not so much build in like a dragging motion, so much as watching the spacing to make sure that the fingers kind of ease in and out properly. And kind of add some extra motion to the hand as well. So for example here, if we watch that fingertip, it just pops out right there. So by dragging the fingers, I'm not so much like making them floppy. as making sure that the fingertips have interesting spacing. Okay. Let's tone down that rotation forward. Well, specifically on this one. This one really feels like the hand kind of whips downwards for some reason. And actually, let's make sure we do that on the right layer, or else we're going to be in trouble. Okay. Ease that in, make it a little smaller. Same thing here. And same thing back here. This is rotating too much. Okay, let's see how that's feeling. Not bad. Definitely needs a lot more work. Now, one thing I should do, just for the sake of it, let's open up our old shot, and I just wanted to look at my previous version. So what's the wrist doing here? Okay, yeah, that's so boring in comparison looking at it now. So I feel like I'm on the right track. I feel like, yes, things are working, but it's not quite there. What's the next thing we can do? Because this is one of the big things where, as you're looking at it, you're going to find yourself in a position where you're not sure what needs to be fixed anymore. It's definitely better than it was, but it's not right. So, what can we do? Well, there's a few different things that I typically recommend at this stage, and this is stuff I like to do. One is, if we've reached the point where we're just starting to noodle things, let's do a play blast. Let's make sure that we create a play blast here and actually look at it how it's supposed to be. Not just what we think it's feeling and like what's showing up in Maya, but actually what it's looking like to the audience when they play it in a video player. That's going to be very important to get the proper feel for it. The second thing, and I might do this, we'll see, is take a break. The big problem here is we've been looking at this for pretty much 3.5 hours right now, almost 4 hours, which means that our eyes are not fresh to this shot. We're starting to just get into habits, and I should do a play blast of the whole thing, not just the last little bit. Where we're starting to animate, but we're not animating what needs to be done. We're just animating from a list, or kind of, how to put this? We've been looking at it so long that we're trying to match what we feel should be there instead of what should be there. And this is basically a side effect of shot blindness when you've been looking at something for too long. The best way to solve that is to take a break. Step away, come back after 10, 15 minutes or whatever time, and get a fresh look at it. That's what's going to tell you what's working, what's not. If I just keep working on this, I might not be going in the right direction and I'll have to redo it anyway. But let's take a look here. Okay. Okay, it's not so bad. Now, I do notice there's a few little things that I would want to fix. One, that wrist here is a little wonky. Like, look at that. Look at that spacing. Ugh. Basically, all I need to do is tweak my arcs there and track the arcs right through that section. It's not terrible, but it needs a lot more polish. The hand's nice and following the chin though, which is good. And the wave itself is actually not bad. Honestly, it just needs a little bit more polish. Just a few refinements. But definitely I should take a break and just come back after, because I'm going to end up just noodling if I keep going with this. So there's a few other things that we would need to fix. One, we're getting some intersection here. The arc of the wrist here needs to be fixed. The other arm is actually feeling not bad. The main thing that I need to do is push the interaction between the elbow and the hand. Other than that, it's not feeling locked off like it did before, which is good. I don't really want that much animation on it, so I might just add a little pass on the fingers at some point. But honestly, we're pretty close to done on this. A little bit of an arc on the wrist, cutting, and a little bit more polish on that wave, and that's pretty much it. So let's see. Trying to think what I could do in whatever time we have left, because I only have about 15 minutes left before I have to go do some work. So what would be the most beneficial thing to work on? Well, let's do this. Let's do a pass on this wrist, because we haven't done that yet, and it's taking away some of the kind of believability and physicality when that wrist is just kind of sitting there doing its own thing and not reacting with the hand. Or sorry, I should say with the elbow. So let's go back into our keys here, display, and I just want to look at my rotations there. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a quick pass. And actually before that, let's actually fix the cutting in the chest here, because that's going to affect the elbow too. So as the character breathes, turn off our cached playback, get his eyes back in his head. So as he breathes, just going to push that out just a little bit. So maybe not quite as much. I want that arm to feel like it reacts to the breath. Okay. Make sure that doesn't flatten out right there. Oh, where'd I go? My camera died. Apparently the battery was exhausted. So I have to let the battery charge back up. Let's drag that back just a little bit more. And then this needs to ease a little bit more. It's not a webcam. It's actually a DSLR camera. So like a full lensed camera. It's why it looks so like there's that depth of field in the camera. Not that I can show it right now, but yeah, it's an actual like camera. So let's see. Elbow here is going to cause some issues. Let's actually keep that a little further out. Something like that. Basically what I want is that elbow shouldn't feel like it snaps back here too much. And I need to watch that arc of the elbow. So I'll have to tweak the spacing there, but the problem is the wrist is also causing the spacing issues, so I'm gonna have to work on that in just a second. But we've got that roughly in place. Let's just quickly take a look here and see how we can kind of connect things a little bit. So the hand's sitting on the wrist. As it comes up, we can kind of bring that wrist up here just a little bit. So we kind of get that feeling that the hand is supporting the elbow. A little bit. Not going to be perfect. I could actually bring it out, the elbow, a little bit more here. Okay. So, comes up. Let's hold that up just a little longer. Comes down. I'm just doing this super rough. And then here. Pushes down. Comes up. I'll clean up my curves in just a bit. Okay. Yeah, definitely a little bit messy there. Not a bad thing. You'll notice that oftentimes as I'm working, I tend to work pretty messily first, and then I'll just go in and do a quick pass afterwards. I find it just kind of helps me get the main motion in, and then from there I can focus on properly building out the action versus trying to get it absolutely perfect right away and then just having way too much detail to deal with. Okay. Oh, is my mic muted? Okay, never mind. Okay. Let's just get a little bit of motion in there. Now, another way I could have done this was set up a constraint between the elbow and the hand. The main problem with that is it would cause more offsets than I would want. So it's better in this case to just do it by eye. And it's not going to be perfect, definitely not. But I just want something rough here. Worst case scenario, if I find it doesn't work, I can just keep the hand still and not have the elbow kind of pushing on it. So worst case scenario, I've got my buffer curves, I can reset it. And this is the nice thing with buffer curves. And actually, you know, as I'm looking at this, I'm just not liking it. It feels weird. It doesn't feel like it's getting the feeling I want. So boop, there we go. There we go. Keep that subtle. And that way the elbow and the hand don't feel like they're actually interacting. So instead of having to deal with a ton of tiny little interactions and just that painful situation, keep it simple. Now the big thing here is I need to track this wrist right through here and just clean up that spacing right in there. You can see it. Look at that. Right there. So let's find that locator here. And just push this key a little further out. There we go. See. Comes out. Doop. Still not quite right. Okay. A little bit more. This is where the graph editor comes in really handy. Now it comes out. And I think I can overshoot this curve a little bit. Get that nice and round. And now it's kind of swooping in too fast here. So let's take that and offset it. Another frame here. Ease that out a little bit. A little bit more like this. Okay. I think it might be a little bit of rotate Z as well. Yeah, that's definitely not helping my arc. Okay. So smooth that out a little bit. And as it comes in here. I just need to overshoot that a little bit more. Round that arc out just a little bit more there. We just get a little bit of a nice little motion through there. Even here. Let's see what happens if I just do this. Oh yeah, that's better. Now we've got that nice round arc right through there. Okay, that's not right. Rotate X. Now ease that in. Let's just put the key where we need it. So this is something, if you're trying to fix your arcs and it's just like not working out, just set some keys and put the arc exactly where you need it to be. So I need it right there. There we go. So now that hand is nice and clean. There's a little bit of a pop right there, but visually on the edge of the hand we're not seeing it, so that's good. Okay. So there was the hand. We addressed that. This hand was okay. The elbow was cutting through the body, so we should have fixed all of those. Let's do a play blast and see. It might not be perfect, but I think at this point, the only other thing is to polish the hand during the wave, which is just going to be a lot of fine tuning. So I think we can probably call it here. And in my free time, I'll probably polish this up and post the final online somewhere. But for now, I think we're pretty much done this animation. Of course, there's always little things that we can clean up, but let's see. Yeah, that wrist feels way better. There we go. Yeah, I'll definitely send it to you once I've polished it up a little bit more. Yeah, it's really that wave. Now, I'm thinking for the wave, I might end up making a new constraint system for it so that we can animate it a little bit more, how to say, just animate with a little bit more detail. We'll see. It's going to depend on how much time I have, how much free time I have to polish that up. But yeah, I think we've got it.